Meeting of the Laramie Planning Commission to order. It is 4:30. Clerk, can you please give us a roll call?
Bacino,
Here.
Dixon,
Here.
Madmore,
Here.
O'Toole,
Here.
Priscillic,
Here.
Schneider,
Here.
and Moody is absent. There is 6 present, 1 absent.
On to item 2, approval of agenda. Any motion?
I'll move to approve the agenda and the minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded on the agenda and the minutes.
Can we just do that separate?
Okay. Well, we have to
Okay.
do them separate. So agenda first.
Yep.
So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay.
Aye.
I'll move we approve the planning commission meeting minutes from our last meeting of 8/14/2023.
Second. Minutes. So those in favor of approving the minutes from the last meeting? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting minutes approved. Item number 3, citizen comments. These are non-agenda related topics and no action can be taken. Do we have any citizen comments that's not related to the preliminary plat that's on the agenda further down the line? Seeing none in the room or online, we'll move on to item number 4, planning commission and staff reports and comments. Anything from
Chair, we don't have anything to announce today.
disclosures, ex parte communications, potential conflicts of interest? None, saying none. Current planning projects, old business, none. New business. Looks like the preliminary plat 22-02 Ridgeline Estates preliminary plat. Joseph, I guess the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Today, we have before you the preliminary plat for Ridgeline Estates. Ridgeline Estates was started in July 20th, 2022, and it is a 32 lot single family subdivision on 9.1 acres of land on the corner of 30th Street and Harney. That would be the northwest corner of that intersection. The lots range in size from 7,200 feet roughly to around 1,200 square feet or 12,000 square feet, and are consistent with the lots that are in the area, whether in the Alta Vista neighborhood or the Reynolds Park or Richards Park, excuse me, Richards Park subdivision. The subdivision is accessible off of both Harney, or it's only accessible off of Harney Street, but off of 3 new streets, one of which is Colt Street, and then the other is Boot Hill Street. Traffic is being mitigated on that through a pork chop, which will be on the closest intersection of Colt and Harney to the 30th and Harney intersection. So that's going to only be a right in, right out intersection to kind of mitigate a lot of the problems that we see there with congestion, either in morning rush hour or in evening rush hour. The subdivision will be served by a city water, sewer, and all other city services, including police, fire, and solid waste. The subdivision is surrounded by primarily R1 zoning. This property right here is considered R1 zoning, which is single family residential, and is currently vacant. The one to the north, directly to the north, it's considered parks and open space, but it is a very little piece of parks and open space. Right beyond it is R1, and it is the Richards Park subdivision. Directly to the south, you have R3 multifamily, but it is the university's Research and Extension Center. And then to the east, you have the Alta Vista subdivision. And to the west, you have a continuation of Richards Park on the hill. In the process of reviewing this, we go through quite a few of the planning documents that City Council and you all have approved in the past in order to determine compatibility with the city for development. The first one we look at is the comprehensive plan. For the most part, this subdivision is compatible with the future land use map found in section 3.2. The future land use determines that it's a suburban commercial, but within that, single family residential is an applicable use. Additionally, within that plan, it's important to know that it does highlight infill development, which this property certainly is. This is within an area that is close to city services that are already in place, and also within existing neighborhoods. We also looked at the housing study and action plan, and as you all already know, the 15-year estimate for the city is that we'll need 4,100 housing units. This certainly takes a chunk out of that with their 32 unit proposal. In that plan, it highlights some areas of the city that are important for development and highlighted for that. The first, like the comprehensive plan, points out that we want to have stuff that is in close proximity to existing infrastructure and utility systems and pertinent public facilities. That includes things like hospital, fire, EMS service, and police, including, our water and sanitary services, all of which are already located close to there, and everything that's within the street art is capable of handling what this subdivision is proposing. Additionally, it highlights continued progression of concentric growth patterns. This is within the city, so it definitely falls within that. It also wants you to focus on areas that are cost effective for development and not within floodplains, floodways, steep slopes, ridge lines, or the Casper Aquifer. Within that, the only thing that it doesn't meet is the ridge line. However, that being said, our engineering, as well as the client's engineering, has looked at this extensively to determine stability of slopes and where the water will go, where storm water will go off of this property. Additionally, the other one that we're looking at is the Thrive Laramie Community and Economic Development Action Strategy of 2020. And it, as you can see within the staff report, it does meet all of those criteria and meets our continued efforts to make Laramie a more business-friendly community by providing more housing within the community. We also looked at the Parks and Rec Master Plan. And this was one where it was a little bit more of a gray area. We found that our Parks and Rec Master Plan and our comprehensive plan were not aligned in this, where there was a multi-use trail running through this property diagonally. In talks with our Parks and Rec department, we determined that that was not a necessary feature and that we would keep everything on Harney Street and 30th Street because it was going to be more compatible with the area. There is going to be improvements to that intersection closest to the subdivision. We heard comments that it is very hard for pedestrians to cross in that area. And so those concerns were addressed. Since there's not going to be a park or a trail or anything running through the property, the city did request a park in lieu fee, which is outlined within the staff report as well. Additionally, this follows the major street plan. Harney and 30th are minor arterials and are capable of handling this sort of traffic. Additionally, we looked at lot block and platting. There's 3 blocks within this subdivision for the 32 residential units. They all meet requirements of normal dimensions for lot size within the R1 zoning district. And additionally, the only thing that we had concerns about was the block size, but we did generally, when we're looking at that, it's more of blocks that are too big or too small for the area, but these blocks are very appropriate for the size of the acreage and the size of the lots that are being proposed. And so that was something that the applicant can request out of, and per staff recommendation, we did recommend that those blocks can be smaller than the required amount. Additionally, we looked at traffic and street layout and access way. As previously described, there's 3 accesses within subdivision. 2 are off of that Colt Street, which is kind of a loop, and then 1 is off of Boot Hill. There was some concern about the proximity of the easternmost entrance to 30th Street and its proximity to the intersection of 30th and Harney. However, we worked with the applicant's engineer to design a pork chop traffic calming mechanism so that there's only a right in, right out of that specific entrance. That should make it so that there's not a lot of backup caused by this specific subdivision at that light. Additionally, within that, we have to do traffic studies, and it was found that there was no significant impacts to circulation that would occur due to this subdivision. Drainage was certainly a concern here. We had heard from the community that the areas directly below the subdivision had had a considerable amount of water in the last couple of years in our large storm events. That being said, the applicant is, per our city code, only required to account for a 100-year storm event. And so what you have on site is a detention pond right next to 30th Street on that northern corner of the property. The drainage within that on that site is going to be changed significantly. There's been a lot of drainage going off just off the north end of that property, straight down into the lots down below. And with this development, once this development is completed, all the water that will be coming off of that will be going towards the drainage pond. Let me correct myself. Most of the water will be going towards the drainage pond. There will still be some going down the hill, but significantly less than what it has been for the last for forever. since that area was built. Additionally, we looked at water and sewer services. These lots, like everywhere else in the city, will be connected to city water and sewer services. And we do have adequate water supply and volume to accommodate the 32 lots as proposed. Parkland dedication is an additional part that I did go over a little bit earlier, but again, we did change a requirement from a multi-use path running diagonally through the lot to parkland dedication. And so it will be a fee that will come into play when everything is final platted. Everything that is you see within that final plat does meet the standards set aside by the International Fire Code. And our fire department had no comments related to concerns that about the access or safety of these lots. So as we're going through this, there is a few things that we have to analyze before giving approval, which we did. The proposed plats comply with the minimum lot size and dimension requirements by the zoning district in which the plat is located. This is an R1 zoning district, so we have pretty large lot sizes, and they are very compatible with what you see in the area already. The proposed plat complies with design requirements of the Laramie Municipal Code Title 15. The staff and the appropriate departments have already reviewed this and have determined that it does meet all of these requirements. Future development can adequately be served by public services and infrastructure, including water, sewer, and other utilities. We determined that it can be serviced now and in the future by all utilities that the city provides, as well as have gotten written consent from Rocky Mountain Power and Spectrum and the Postal Service, which is a required part of the platting process. General applicable review criteria. This is consistent with terms and conditions of any prior approval, including public improvements and amenities. There were no prior approvals for this site. And so this was not a applicable section. This is consistent with the comprehensive plan and other applicable plans. As discussed earlier, all plans that city staff reviewed were this subdivision was consistent with any plans that the city reviewed previously. Compliance with use and development standards per LMC design standards, subdivision standards, public improvement standards, floodplain management, and any other applicable standards. All improvements required under LMC will be met through the preliminary plat and the associated final plat process. We also look at other state, local, and federal regulations. And the preliminary plat was routed through the necessary state and local departments, including YDOT, who had no concerns regarding this development. Consistent with terms and conditions of any other intergovernmental agreements, there's no terms or conditions or IGAs associated with this property. It minimizes adverse environmental impacts. As we said previously, the ridgeline was determined to be safe per our city standards, and there was no adverse environmental impacts. Minimizes adverse impacts to surrounding neighborhoods and properties. As we talked about previously, most of the concerns related to this development had to do with water and stormwater and where it would go on this property. Historically, this has gone off the north end of that property into neighbors' backyards and sometimes into neighbors' basements. However, with the design, most of this will be going towards the northeast corner to that drainage pond. It minimizes adverse fiscal impacts to the city. Following city review, no adverse fiscal impacts were noted. Complies with utility services and improvement standards. The development can be adequately served by city water and sewer services. Additionally, franchise utilities and the postal services were contacted, and there was no issues that were noted through those entities. It provides adequate road system to serve the proposed use and ensure safe ingress, egress, and adequate access for fire, public safety, and EMS services. As described previously, this is two real streets. One is a loop, but there is 3 ingress egresses to the subdivision. We addressed the major concern of traffic safety related to the easternmost entrance through that pork chop. Provides adequate public services and facilities to accommodate the use permitted under the development proposal, such as roads, sewers, water, stormwater, schools, public safety, fire protection, vehicle pedestrian connection, and access to adjacent properties. The development adequately addressed all of these, and rational phasing plan. As far as we can tell, and from our meetings with the client and his engineer, this is preliminary platted and final platted as just a single phase, to our knowledge. So yeah. As is required by state statute, we did send out legal notice in the Boomerang on August 12th. We also sent letters to surrounding properties, owners within 300 feet of the subject property on August 11th. And so people within the vicinity did get those. In conclusion, we do recommend the conditional approval of Ridgeline Estates based on findings of fact and conclusions of law and subject to staff recommended conditions, which are listed below. So we do have, additionally, we have the applicant as well as the applicant's engineer here, and we also have city engineering staff if you do have any questions regarding any more or anything that I did not specifically address.
Thanks. I have a couple of questions. Is it the appropriate time to ask planning questions? And then I'll ask for other questions. But first off, you had said that pedestrian crossings across Harney was a concern and that they had been mitigated. What was the mitigation strategies employed to reduce, or increase, I guess, pedestrian safety in those crossings?
There were some questions about where the placement of there are some questions regarding the placement of the traffic button and its relation to the sidewalk. If you can see from the aerial view, you can see that it's pretty far off of the actual sidewalk in that area. And so there was some back and forth whether or not we should move a pole with a button right there. I believe that the final conclusion for that was just paving to that pole that is currently there, so that it is easier for somebody with accessibility issues to get to, or really anyone.
But does the crossing stay at the intersection still at 30th and Hardy? Or
Yes,
is it moved?
the crossing
actual
stays
crosswalk
at the
is-
same place, yes.
You had mentioned a couple times that significant grading was going to occur, on the preliminary plat. That we have only existing contours are shown. What is the proposed grading plan? Or do we know what that looks like yet? Is that something that comes in further subsequent, submittals for the final plan?
I believe that's addressed, and I think that the applicant's engineer might be better suited at responding to that, or William.
Yeah, I guess, or Mr. Ralph, if you want to address that, please do.
Yeah, we're mostly trying to the main concerns with grading were directing the stormwater to the proposed northeast detention pond. Grades of streets meet city of Laramie requirements that you can't be more than 4% grade within 100 feet of an intersection. And that's really the only I think that was really the only issue that we needed to address was one, that we were meeting minimum slopes to direct stormwater to the northeast, and two, that the slopes at the intersections wouldn't be too steep.
So
That-
is there a significant amount of fill proposed on the north side? Because it looks like there's 8 to 9 foot of drop towards the north. Is that like, is it Colt Street, is that planning on being raised, 7 or 8 feet, or is everything running to the north and you're just capturing in the street and directing it to the detention pond?
Everything's run to the north, and we're catching it in the street, directing it to the detention pond.
And the streets have the capacity to convey the amount of water that's going to be generated?
That's correct.
Okay.
Both the streets and the proposed stormwater inlets that will lead to the detention pond have been sized for proposed flows.
And I think maybe the second to last question, the detention pond acre is about just shy of 11,000 square feet. How deep is that detention pond expected to be? 3 or 4 feet deep with a foot of freeboard?
With a foot of freeboard, I need to pull that up here I pulled up that exact page, if you'll bear with me. But it is looking to be about 3 or 4 feet with that foot of freeboard. I don't think it's going to be much deeper than that.
Maybe I was incorrect on being that second last question. So this detention pond being perched on the hill like this poses a significant risk to downstream homes right below this subdivision. What's the mitigating strategy to, I wouldn't say ensure, but to mitigate any possible, drainage, berm breach and inundate any houses directly, downhill from this pond?
An emergency spillway channel has been provided running right on 30th Street, where the pond butts up to 30th Street. So we have a foot of freeboard everywhere else, protecting the houses to the north, and the emergency channel will direct stormwater to the east and into 30th Street and the existing infrastructure there.
Do you know what that emergency spillway is sized for? What storm event?
100-year.
Okay. Let's see the water system. What's the existing water pressure along Harney Street in front of the subdivision?
The existing pressures, that's my report here. Okay. It says it's in zone 3 of the city of Laramie water distribution zoning and has 60 to 70 PSI. Available water pressure.
Okay, and that has sufficient volume and pressure to meet fire flow demands?
That's correct.
All right, that's all I got. Anybody else have any other questions on the planning commission for?
I do.
Mr. Chair.
I'm concerned with the grading. Let's see, we've got two lots. I can't read the numbers on them here. But we've got some significant falls there. I mean, I've walked it. Some of it appears to be about 14 feet. And how are we going to address that? Actually, you've got 4 lots that are just nothing but, a hillside. And
Are you referring on to the north side of the north side of the subdivision?
Yeah,
Side of Cold Street.
I believe he's looking at lot number 5, number 6, number 9, and number 10, and possibly lot number 13.
Yeah.
I see. So the proposed grading that we were discussing earlier is planning to fill in a lot of those spots, those low spots, so that drainage will be directed to the street. And then so there'll be a traditional lot set up where you can have your house and driveway on the towards the middle and front of the lot. And the back of the lot will be a 4-to-1 slope, a 4-to-1 or more gentle slope going into the existing houses to the north.
And what are you doing with the water that falls off of that 4-to-1 slope down in this pathway there? How is it gonna get? Doesn't even look like it goes to the detention pond. It looks like
That
it would flow.
So that would be what Joe mentioned would be the reduced quantity that would run to the properties, and that's reduced being by providing that fill towards the the front 2/3 of the lot being filled up and directing storm water to the south to the road. And then the storm water that we calculated coming off of that slope that we're leaving to the north, that will be left to the north, is actually significantly less than what's running on now, just because we have changed the complexion of that. We will be changing the grading and complexion of those slopes so that they're more buildable.
Will you be submitting a final grading plan with your final plat?
That is correct. Full construction plans will be provided.
As a general rule, I'm in favor of subdivisions. As for just general knowledge, City of Laramie, as of the last day of July, has had only 33 single-family residence building permits issued. So if we're ever going to make our 4,000 increase, we'd better get started on it, because we're way behind. But I think due diligence has to be paid on grades on hills. We had problems with the last subdivision that we did where there was significant dirt runoff over on Beaufort Street. So just concerned that we make sure we don't do that again over here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question about what the statement on page 7, as second to last paragraph, means. So there's a statement, after development, property owners will be required to keep graded and historic flows on site and not allow them to cross into neighboring properties. What exactly does that mean? What obligation does that place on the property owners?
So essentially that's a statement that keeps them from changing the grading of the lots. The way that the proposed grading will lay out with how we discussed directing stormwater. If I need to reserve a stormwater easement between lots and then create a swale between lots that directs stormwater, that's essentially saying that the engineer and during development, due diligence was done to make sure that stormwater is directed to right of way that either directs it towards the pond or existing stormwater infrastructure. So that's a statement saying that they can't modify their lots to direct stormwater onto their neighbors after initial engineering, if that makes sense.
And how would that be enforced?
Well, I mean, normally lots come with plot plans. As you sell off individual lots, you take note of the grading of the lot, how the house is placed, where the where the house drains to on the property lines, and then where the property lines drain to. And you have a record of that as part of building the house. And then if that's changed in any significant way, if someone has come in and done construction that changes the flow of stormwater, well, we have a record of what the proper stormwater flow looks like, so that if we go out and survey the way it looks today, we can take note of any changes.
And the last question, will the final plat come before this group?
Absolutely.
Chair, chair through you. So the process that this goes through for both the preliminary and the final plat does go through planning commission. This also goes before city council as well. So your recommendation is either to approve or deny, or a recommendation to either approve or deny to city council, who ultimately approves this. And so you will see both the preliminary and the final plat before any lots are sold. So,
Mr. Chair, if I may, the only other question is what's to preclude a future homeowner from putting in retaining walls and leveling off his lot, so he's got more room for his yard or whatever purpose? Is that going to affect your drainage plan?
chair through you. So it's a possibility that somebody could do that. However, they would have to go through the necessary channels to get that approved. They couldn't just build it without doing an engineer design report and proving that it's not exceeding the historical flows on that hillside. And any major changes to that would have to be addressed within their engineer design report to ensure stability of the slope, stormwater management.
All right, thank you.
So along with Member Matimer's question, would that be done during a building permit process?
If that was done during the initial building, yes, it would. However, and Jared, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, I have not seen anything related to walls, stabilizing walls on the hillside.
None are currently planned. We're hoping to go with just laying the slope flatter, filling in steep eroded areas, and using greenscape landscaping to prevent erosion in the future.
Yeah, thanks. No questions? Okay.
Chair, I believe Sylvie.
Oh, okay, go ahead. I can't see the little hand, so
Thank you.
go ahead.
I wanted to ask about, or just recommend, roundabouts, because a well-designed traffic circle has a higher safety profile for pedestrians than a traditional intersection. And they have so many other benefits, like reducing the speed of traffic and saving the time wasted at a red light. I would just like to see more of that incorporated into future developments in Laramie. Certain cities are like models for it, like Avon, Colorado has so many roundabouts, and they handle moderate to heavy traffic and lots of pedestrians.
Chair, I believe that city engineer William Winkler could probably answer why that wasn't considered in this case. Or was that just a general comment that we want to see this not just at something in a project like this, but throughout the city?
Both.
I guess to follow up with her statement, was a roundabout considered as part of this design? Or if not, why not?
So the roundabout was not considered as a solution at this location. The improvements are limited in the actual intersection of 30th and Grace Gable there, Harney Street. So to put a roundabout at any of the other 3 intersections that are happening there would be too close in proximity to the 30th and Harney intersection. And so we didn't consider any other, we looked at if any kind of signal upgrades were going to be needed, and there weren't, as there's already a signal there. And all it would take is for if there was additional demands in there that we'd maybe look at adjusting the timings. So no, with the existing signal there, we did not consider a roundabout.
Okay, thank you. I guess we have no further questions as a commission. Okay, thank you, Philip. I guess, Mr. Brome, do you have anything to add? And then we will. Okay, I guess, can we open it for public comment? Okay. Looks like there's a few people here, so we would like to do an orderly fashion. I don't know who wants to go first, and I don't know how we manage it, but. Yeah, you're sitting in the front, please come up. Yep, please come up and state your name and.
We have the big retention pond. I have a few questions and I think they can be answered by the engineer here. How big is the retention pond compared to that pond? How many homes, single residence homes, are in Richards Park? On what average size lot? And what is going to be the ratio of these 32 to what we find in Richards Park? I'm curious. Also, could we ever see the plat, the prelim plan up on the screen? Is there a possibility?
Brandon, can you put that on the screen perhaps? So can you put that on the screen so we could, so everybody else can see it?
There has been in the past a lot of water retained in that big ditch. I call it Fitzgerald's pond because Jim Fitzgerald is my next door neighbor, and I know they purchased that property. I'm just hoping that if there is 100-year flood, or perhaps there might be one greater, those people down in Richards Park are going to be buried. They're going to be swept away. So it just seems like.
And what location are you talking about that you mentioned the ditch?
Well, the retention pond.
The retention pond, the east side of 30th Street and Reynolds.
Right, correct.
Oh, the existing one.
Yeah,
The existing one. So
And
that's all I have. Thank you.
would you just mind stating your name and your address just for the record, or if it's written down there, that's fine.
Bruce Adams, 1078 Alta Vista. Our home is right above the retention, that white wall on the east side of 30th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next.
But are there any answers to that? Does anybody have any idea how many?
I can-
homes in Richards Park?
I can tell you, so I don't know anything about Richards Park. I don't have any information on that, the size of that pond, or what's the area that's discharging it into it versus, any of those questions about Richards Park. What I can tell you is that for Ridgeline Estates in that northeast corner in that detention pond easement, I'm proposing a 37,500 cubic foot detention pond. And the idea is it will discharge into the curb and gutter of 30th Street at the City of Laramie's Public Works Department's usual requirement is you detain the 100-year storm and discharge it at the 10-year rate. So I'll be holding the 100-year storm in that pond and discharging at the 10-year rate into 30th Street. And at the end of all the calculations, I have about the same discharge in a 100-year storm for a fully developed subdivision. So there's a home on every lot. All the driveways are put in, all the streets are paved, so we're generating as much stormwater as possible. Worst case scenario, in a 100-year storm, you have full build out. That is going to have the same amount of discharge onto 30th and Harney Street as a 100-year storm discharging from that bare ground. And we worked with Public Works to make sure that we were within that acceptable range of stormwater discharge in a 100-year event. So what's going to be going into the detention pond on 30th Street will be comparable to what is being discharged by the empty lots now. Does that help your question?
And I can answer your question in relation to the detention pond comparison. The current detention pond is about 2¼ acres. This is a 1/4 acre. So it's significantly smaller. Now, I don't know the total volume of acre feet comparison, but just the surface of it. And the relation to the lot size, that's a little more in detail that I don't have at my fingertips. So we can get those answers for you though. That's fine. So, okay, next question or comments, please.
My name is Chris Rasinski and my address is 2910 Dover. Our property is actually in that very northeast corner of proposed development. So I guess my concern is the final grade. What does that look like? I'd also like the city to elaborate on most of the water, or the engineer, what is, if it's equal to the full amount, or is it? I heard that, but I can't imagine that to be true. And then the other thing is, did anybody look at the soils where this proposed retention pond is going to be placed? It's I think this is where the university dumped their waste soil and rock, and it's a very nasty part of the property, as I know when I put the fence in. So I don't know if that's part of, if the city looked at that at all. And then the last thing is related to the final grade. That pond, is it the edge of the pond, are they gonna have to build that up, or are they gonna cut the pond out? And that'll really change the risk to our property there.
Can you restate your first question about the quantity or the volume of water? Can you clarify what you mean?
So the city, I'm sorry, is that proper? Can I just say Derek's, guys? No, I don't. Joseph, sorry. Yeah. Said most of the water, and then the engineer said all of the water. I'd like that written out, like quantified. in the plan because there's a big difference.
Right. Yeah, Jared, could you elaborate on that? What?
Yeah.
Can you delineate on that map? I don't know if you have the ability to mark up that preliminary plat, but could you delineate which areas go or which areas don't go to the detention pond? Is that something you're capable of doing?
I can kind of point out from where I'm sitting, based on my files I have here. I'm looking at about, I believe it's lot 5, off of Cold Street on the west side.
Jared, not to interrupt you, but I might be able to pull up a drawing for you.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
So we're not to give you the overview, we're not capturing all of the stormwater. You're right about that. It's with the combination of the water that's going to be flowing out onto Harney Street, added to the water that's being let out of the detention pond that's being metered out. That's how we control the release rate. Where there's some storm water that's flowing to the south that isn't captured, that the city referred to earlier. That's what we're going to meter in the detention. And when you add all that together, the detention pond release rate plus what's freely flowing into the curb and gutter, it's actually almost 1.5 CFS less than what's out there now, just with the controls we're installing that way. Does that make sense? Does that help with your question?
Yeah, so basically everything north of Cold Street will continue to flow to the north.
Yes. Or I can't properly delineate right now. But there is some things south of Cold Street that will flow to the south, and the north part of the subdivision will be directed towards the detention pond, and that's how we're controlling that stormwater release rate going into 30th and Harney. I believe, let me get my grading plan here. Yeah, starting at if you look at Colt Street on the west side, starting lot 5, and it counts over 5, 6, 7, 8. Those lots, their stormwater will be directed to the east and north into the detention pond, starting at about lot 5 there. To the south of lot 5 and to the for a I'm going to say half of lot 3, that triangular lot that's at the corner of Boot Hill and Cold Street. That's good. That's where flows are going to start going back to the south towards Harney Street. And we've calculated that the captured flow in Colt Street versus the uncaptured flow in Boot Hill Street flowing towards Harney is actually comparable, slightly less than existing flows. The next question I remember, as for that detention pond, it's going to be cut in. It will not be built out. It will be dug down from existing. We're using that. It'll be the northern property line for the detention ponds to your southern property line. That's going to remain. That's going to remain existing. We'll not touch that elevation. We'll just start cutting down immediately to the south. And what I was discussing earlier with the city about freeboard and stormwater mitigation. There is a maximum height that water can accumulate to in that pond. That is at minimum a foot below the height of your southern property line. So we're gonna be, so once water starts spilling over what we call the top of the pond going into 30th Street, it'll be at least a foot below that existing grade at your southern property line.
And that, more specifically, that northwest corner of the pond, there's almost a 5-foot drop there that you're gonna cut down.
It'll cut down into our side. We will not be, there won't be any grade changes on your side. It should be, that hill is falling to the north into your property. We've picked out spots where we will either build up or just to have that safety there. And
You said built up. That's my concern.
well, it's
build
that's to make sure that we have that foot above the spillway elevation. So that northwest corner, there's a small, you can see in that northwest corner where the contours stop touching. That's where we're putting in a little, that's where the elevation falls off more. So to prevent stormwater from going into your property, that's a slight buildup. It's very slight. The rest of those contours will be the 5-foot cut down into the existing grade. That'll all be below existing grade. And if you see at the southeastern corner where it looks like there's kind of like a pebble kind of pattern there, we call that a hatching. That's the location of the spillway. I did that on purpose. I moved that as far away from your property on purpose for the express to get it into 30th Street before it reaches your property. And you'll notice that it's about a foot lower in that, the top of the pond's about a foot lower there. And if you look to the north, the pond's deeper. That's the freeboard. That's the extra foot of elevation where we're saying it's not going to reach this elevation because it's already spilling out over the spillway.
Jared, can you also address the question about the soil study in that pond? Was there any boreholes in the location of that detention pond?
Let me see where our boreholes were here. I don't think we haven't done boreholes. I don't have anything on that.
No, none. Is there any
None.
plan?
What's that?
Is there any geotech plan?
No, we dug some test holes on site. Just basically, we want to see if there was a rock shelf under there. We did dig some test holes on site, but there's no geotech for contamination.
Okay. Next question, comment from. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, please, again, state your name and address.
I'll sign it after. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, as long as the little green thing around the thing here is on.
It's on. Okay, my name is Tammy Hooper. I live at 2911 Dover Drive. So I'm in Richards Park and I'm on the north side of Dover Drive. So I'm not directly butted up to the hill. But I did have a couple of comments and then just on page 5 of the staff report, it talks about that it's the subdivision is comprised of primarily single family units. So is it, if it was all single family units, wouldn't that be exclusively? Or what is primarily? Is that like, if there's 32 lots, and so is that 17 lots have single family unit homes, and then the other remaining 15, which would be less than 50%, so you wouldn't have primarily, would be something else. So that's a question that I have. I don't know if you can answer that. Is it single?
You can go ahead with your.
Okay, okay, so that's on page 5. And then regarding the drainage, where somebody had mentioned about the property owners being responsible for that. Up until that point, though, who's responsible if, I don't know how long this development's going to take to come to fruition. It's a one phase, I understand from the plan. So how long, what is the timeline for the start to the finish. To get this all done where the lots are all platted and all the infrastructures in. And with regard to the question about the homeowners would be responsible after they buy the lot and then they're in it. I'm sorry, I do my own landscaping and I put in a retaining wall in my backyard and I've never pulled a building permit, and I doubt, I would like to know how many people in Laramie who have done their own landscaping or whatever have pulled a building permit for, I didn't realize it was required to do landscaping in your own backyard. But that said, so that's just another comment. I don't think that that's going to be a protection for if somebody decides to change the slope or the grade of their backyard that butts up to that hill and then goes down. And if they change it, sure, they're liable, but then the onus would then be on the people who have been damaged and or their insurance companies to take care of that problem. And the other thing with the drainage, I watched 30th Street and we've had whatever you want to call them, 100-year events. We've had several of them, I would say. We had one last August, as everyone well remembers. We've had a couple. We had tremendous amounts of rain in June. And I've lived in Laramie long enough. I'm a native. I remember 20 years ago when water was over 2 feet high flowing down Reynolds. So we have more than these 100-year events. Everybody's like, oh, it happens only once every 100 years, but they happen more and they happen more frequently. I've seen the water going down the gutters in Reynolds. I can look out my wall and it's cascading and it's above the curb and it goes down to the bottom of 30th and Reynolds down there at the bottom and then it pools. And so then you see cars as they're driving, people, they're out and about in storms and it's a big pool down at the bottom there. So I think the city probably needs to address some drainage issues at the very bottom of 30th and Reynolds there. So those are just my comments. I do worry about the drainage. I worry about it for just, for everyone because of the grading of that hill. I mean, it's tough to grow stuff there. So, I mean, it's great to think that you can landscape it to prevent erosion, but short of riprap, which is incredibly ugly, that's just, those are my comments. I just would like to know what the timeline would be as well, when this is going to start and finish. And then one more thing, since I just remembered this because it's summer, but in the winter, who's going to be responsible? Because you said that this was started in June of 2022, but I can tell you in the winter of 2022, the sidewalk that borders this right now was not shoveled as per the city ordinance in a timely fashion every time after a snowfall. So who's going to be responsible for making sure, I know the homeowners that are, their lots are on that street side would probably likely be responsible for that, but the sidewalk on 30th up to Harney and then interspersed in there, who's going to be responsible for the snow removal? Because it hasn't happened with regularity like it should as per the city ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to give a stab at some of these questions, Joe?
Chair, I'm gonna try to go in order of the questions that she proposed. First was the wording of primarily single family. So this is a single family zoning district, and so everything has to come in line with code and the uses within that. If it is, there's other things that are permitted within an R1 zoning district that are not multifamily, but are also not considered single family. The EDR was done with the assumption that everything was going to be a single family residential build on these lots. But when lots are purchased, there are options within even the R1 zoning district. And that was the reason why I used primarily single family zoning, or primarily single family units within this. So to my knowledge, to what the applicant and the engineer have said, it appears that it will be all single family units. But the use table does allow other things. Nothing with huge intensities, but it does allow other things. As far as a start to finish timeline, that I cannot give you. There's a lot of things that come into play, and it's primarily on the developer and building community to build the lots according to what they see as necessary in the community and what they assume can sell. And so it, they have to follow the preliminary and final plat timeline. But beyond that, each lot and the building timeframe can be somewhat up in the air.
So on that point, we could say there's two different timelines. One is the subdivision timeline of putting in the utilities and the roadways and all the public improvements. And then the second timeline would be full build out of housing in that development. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I just think a clarification on that. I heard an underlying concern about what's happening to the management of the stormwater during both of those phases. And how is that addressed? And who's responsible?
So we hold the property owners accountable once the lots are developed and once all the engineering has occurred on the lot. As you saw from your last preliminary plat, there are some times where until that lot is fully built out, the engineering design report does not fully address issues with stormwater management on these sites. Currently don't have a interim period stormwater management plan requirement, but that is kind of how it looks at the moment.
Mr. Chair, apropos Tammy's comments there.
Let me turn this on. We have, I live on Reynolds, so I've seen exactly what she's talking about. My concern is we're putting this gutter from this detention pond into the gutters on 30th Street, and it'll run downhill, and I assume it's going to go into the storm sewers on Reynolds that are existing on Reynolds. We just did that in 21 and 22, put in new storm sewers there, but as 22 or 23 have proven they're undersized. So we still had flooding, and as city engineering, and this isn't the developer's issue, as city engineering looked at what additional waters will do downstream on 22nd Street, particularly when you get down to 4th Street, 3rd Street, those areas, which flooded out again, even with the new storm sewers. So I don't know if city engineering said it's okay, but have they done any kind of volumetric study to see what additional waters in that line would do?
Chair, through you, I'd like to kind of push this one too. Jared, we did have you look at the effects down at 30th and Reynolds and the amount of flow that you're putting on the site compared to what the site was contributing prior. So could you please speak to that, Jared?
Yeah. So right now the site is producing, sorry, let me get my report pulled up here. The site is producing about 18.6 cubic feet per second in a 100-year storm. That's what we're saying it's putting into the curb and gutter of 30th and Harney, and to the properties to the north. You put all those discharges together, it's about 18.6 cubic feet per second in this worst case scenario. Working with and then what we came up with working with Public Works is that, okay, so the developed site produces about 24 cubic feet per second. Now, what we do to mitigate that effect is we have that detention pond on the northeast corner. And that detention pond is only going to release the 100-year flows that it captures. It's the outlet structure is sized such that flows are actually reduced to the 10-year historic what the site will put into the curb and gutter into the properties to the north, and what we call a 10-year storm. So that's how City of Laramie Public Works, when they require detention, that's how you do it. Is you have the pond, and you have this massive influx of water from a 100-year storm, but it's sitting in a pond and it's only being let out at a 10-year rate. So when we look at that discharge going into 30th Street, or the total discharge of the whole site, if you include the throttling down that the detention pond provides, it's actually about 17 cubic feet per second. So we're actually reducing the stormwater that goes into 30th and Harney into the properties to the north. And specifically this stormwater that's discharging into the curb and gutter of 30th Street, if I can just confirm with my figures here. Appreciate your patience. Oh, geez. We're reducing the flow is the overall, to answer your question. So we're not putting additional flow into that. My job was either to match the existing discharge or reduce it, and we've gone with reducing it.
That's good for me.
Okay.
Chair, moving on through the questions that Ms. Hooper provided, changes in topography and permitting for that. It's true that we cannot catch every single person who makes adjustments to their property. Some of the time we do hear about it in relation to from a neighbor who lets us know that there is additional water onto their property. But if somebody builds a retaining wall and we don't directly see it, don't notice the changes, it does sometimes take us being notified to do that. That is not unique just for a retaining wall within the city. We see that all over the place for various permits that we require that are not pulled. And so that is a concern that is noted, and we try to address them as quickly as we can. And sometimes they happen without us knowing. As far as, seeing greater than 100-year storm events recently, we can only hold the applicant accountable for 100-year storm events per state statute and per our city code. We can't change the metrics as we go along and require more of the applicant because of, because this is what code states needs to be addressed. And so obviously, we've seen some very large storm events recently, but I can't recommend denial because they're going off of the requirement that we have within the city. And so, and then snow removal, that one I would have to look into a little bit more. The public streets, I know that it is considered a part of the multi-use path. I don't know if that means that Parks and Rec is supposed to address those and the shoveling and this of those walkways, or if it falls down on, you know, this is on the backside of a property owner's area, they are still responsible for that. That's something that I have to look into and get back to you on to know, to give you a complete answer according to our city code. Do you want me to address the questions that were provided previously by the first and second gentleman? Any that weren't addressed? Because I can.
If there were questions that were not addressed, please address them, yes.
So as far as the size of lots and the average size of lots within Richards Park, I did not do a specific calculation on average size of lots within Richards Park. However, the minimum size of lot and the maximum size of lot that are proposed here are well within the minimum and maximum you find in either Alta Vista or in Richards Park. And so that would lead me to, that was really the reason why I have said, and I continue to say, that it is comparable to those. Yeah, and I think that was the only one that was not specifically addressed.
All right, thank you. Do we have any more public comments, please, ma'am? And please state your name and your address, and then on your way back, please sign in.
Excuse me. Ryan?
Can you hear me?
And now I can't. We haven't been
so
able to
sorry.
hear since the very beginning.
Oh, so sorry. You should have said something sooner. My concern was nighttime sky, keeping our beautiful stars in our nighttime sky without lighting it up with great big street lamps. That was the first one expressed on behalf of my neighbors. Second one is that there is no other egress on Grays Gable. And I'm sure everybody who's here tonight is very aware of that. We've already tried to put in an arterial out by Walmart. That's never gone in. We're stuck there, and I hate to see this quiet community impacted so greatly in one corner. And I know there's a lot of people are going to be heading on down Harney, but a lot of them will be coming our way to go to the hospital, to go golfing, whatever. But I welcome you to come drive by at about 20 till 8 and about 20 after 5 and just see what it's like there already. Thanks for your time.
Joe, you want to address the first question? And William, can I lean on you to answer the second question and explain the traffic study and what is meant by minimal impact from a traffic engineering perspective? He's on. Go ahead, Joe.
So as far as minimizing impact to night skies, that's something that we try to do on every development that we do. Through our code, each development, each light that's on either a residential or commercial development is supposed to be either shaded or pointed down, so that it's not directly impacting the night sky. There's a lot of options on how to do this. But ultimately, if there is, a floodlight on a property, that is considered a violation of city code, and we do address it accordingly. And so any floodlights that do exist within the city are either pre-existing non-conforming or violating city code. And we do address them on a fairly regular basis. That, I don't know what the complete impact on the night sky would be from a development like this. We don't require a photometric plan for residential development, but they do still have to comply with city code. So.
All right, thank you. William, can I get you to answer that second question, please? Did you hear it?
Jake, could you repeat it for me?
The question or the comment was that the intersection of Harney and Grays Gable and 30th Street is already quite impacted. And can you explain what a non-adverse or no impact finding from the traffic study indicates in terms of like a level of service?
So, as far as level of service, I would defer to the traffic study, which I'd have to look that up real quick. But what we require is that the development submit a traffic study where they look at the existing volumes and then they project the volumes based on the use of the subdivision. With this being a 32 lot, I think it's 32, right, Joseph? The lot subdivision with single family homes in there. We were looking at anywhere from I think it was approximately 24 trips added in the AM peak hour, with the PM peak hour having about 32 trips per day. This, while that sounds like it's not a large number to add to the volumes that are already entering and exiting that intersection. We're seeing times where you have a couple thousand vehicles going through there in a peak hour. So what I'm getting at is that the level of service is minimally impacted by that small number of traffic or amount of traffic going in there. And that traffic is split flow too. We have assumptions that are made that some are going out of the subdivision to the east, some are going to the west. So with the use in the area, it is the traffic report that we required showed no changes to the level of service in that area, I believe. Jared, could you kind of confirm that if the level of service was directly impacted?
The level of service was not directly impacted per our report.
So one thing we do look at is the 30th and Harney intersection. It does seem like a busy intersection, but it's operating pretty efficiently for traffic movements. But in Laramie, it does have a higher volume than what we expected or what we naturally expect driving across town. So it comes across as a busier intersection. So.
All right, thank you. I don't know that meant much to anybody else, but basically what he is saying is you'll see a little bit more traffic, but as long as we have you're not waiting for more than 2 cycles, it's still functioning as a non-impacted signal, which, it may feel like it's impacted more. And as, the town grows and development occurs around other parts of town, it's, there's only a few arterials north to south. So I don't know that we necessarily addressed your concern or anything, but I wanted to hear that from an engineering perspective to understand what it meant. So I guess next public comment. Yes, sir. Please, state your name and your address and make sure the little green light is on at the bottom of the mic. It'll turn red or green if you push the button.
There you go. I'm Tim Considine. I live at 2833 Dover Drive. My house is on the north side of Dover Drive. There's a house directly across the street from me at the bottom of the hill of the proposed development. I have a couple of questions. Well, first of all, an observation about the house directly across from me. There are two swales on either side of that house. And on August 13th last year, we had an extraordinary rainstorm. And by the way, I have a factual question about, this is my question. How is a 100-year flood defined? For instance, last August 13th, I believe we got in my neighborhood 8 inches of rain in roughly an hour, maybe more, maybe 90 minutes. How does that compare to a 100-year flood? Okay. Now I realize that there's a statutory guideline on, being the 100-year flood. But I think there may be a public safety issue to consider here. First, when I look around town and I look at the various retention ponds, like the one on the corner of 30th and Reynolds, there's one down the street right next to the middle school. And those two ponds were filled to the brim last August. I look around the rest of the town, another retention pond that comes to mind is a relatively new one out behind Walmart in that development. It's in a low spot in the neighborhood. Now for this proposal, we're talking about putting a retention pond on top of a hill with houses directly below it. And the difference in elevation right now, based on the information provided, appears to be 40, 50 feet difference in elevation between the level of the pond and the houses down below. And the distance is relatively short, maybe a couple 100 feet. It's a pretty steep embankment behind the houses across the street from me. So yes, the pond, what happens, for instance, if there, we have another rainstorm, how would that, like the one we had on August 13th, how would the proposed retention pond handle that event? Now, I have a suggestion, or maybe this is a question as well. Did the developers consider alternative locations for the retention pond in the proposed development? For instance, in the southeast corner or the southwest corner of the property. And, if those are viable options, what are the safety, what's the comparison in terms of public safety and, among those alternatives? Finally, I'd like to reiterate the concern I have that Chris raised about the condition of the soil. I've walked on that property on several occasions, just cutting across, and I've noticed that the soil is loose, it's gravelly, doesn't seem very stable, especially when you go down those slopes. So I would second the concern that someone has to do a soil test and see if that pond will hold up to a rainstorm like we had last year. So thank you.
Thank you. Joe, you want to take a stab at some of these? William, I'm gonna throw you in hot seat again to answer a couple of these, and Jared, you too on the last one, but Joseph, I'll let you have the floor.
So the first question was, how is a 100-year flood event defined? That goes off of historical rain data or historical regional data to determine what would be a 1% chance, 1% rain event during a single year. And so these go off of what we have had in the past to determine what we would see in the future. Obviously, the last couple of years we've had larger than that rain events that have been significant. I do want to point out that even when there is a lot of water in a detention pond, the detention pond is doing what it is supposed to be doing at that point. It's not breaching, it's not doing anything like that. It is holding the water. Now, what if there's more? That's always a question that we can only require what we have seen and stay on these standards. Alternative locations of the pond, I would relinquish that question over to Mr. Ralph.
Please go ahead.
Alternative locations, they were considered in the initial layout, but it was essentially figured that with the grading of the site, the way we wanted to lay out
Jared, you kind of froze if you can hear us, kind of disappeared. But in the interim, William, can I ask you what the 100-year total rainfall event is in inches for Laramie? Do you know that off the top of your head and how it compares to inches?
That is not something I know off the top of my head. No. And I will, so I'll try and address some concerns we do, when the city of Laramie reviews the stormwater information that's provided, we do actually consult that out to a consultant that helps do this. That is very savvy in stormwater, very experienced in how to handle it. They have reviewed this subdivision and have deemed that we meet all of the requirements that the city of Laramie has for detaining the 100-year storm to a release rate of the 10-year storm. We have a spillway for those events that may exceed the 100-year storm that then takes it to a direction that's away from the housing. As far as the other grades for this site, we did pull up the detention basins on here, and we are doing, or the applicant is doing significant grading to direct the water to this direction. That gets everything moving towards 30th Street. Jared, I mean, there's a lot of dynamics into that grading and how you locate a pond and have enough grade to not only capture the water, but then release the water, because this is a detention pond, not a retention pond. We don't approve retention ponds very often within the city limits. And so to be able to meet both needs, to where you capture the water and you also release the water, this is the location that we needed to get the pond at.
Yeah, thank you, William. That's precisely it. I didn't really have a good discharge point in other points of the subdivision without drastically investing in a storm sewer system to discharge into. It's in the location it's in, discharging into 30th Street, because that is, as William said, the way we could have it be a detention pond with the ability to flow out into existing infrastructure. And then just to reemphasize, for the benefit of the property owners to the north, the emergency spillway is a foot below at least where the grade to the north is. So by the time it hits that emergency spillway and the pond is full and overflowing, it'll be discharging to the east into 30th Street, but the elevation that water will be at when the pond is full will still be a foot below the grade at that north side of the pond, or that southern property line. So, and that's why we call it freeboard. The water's never going to approach that foot, but that's the safety factor we include to say, okay, if this pond overflows, it will not discharge here. It will discharge at the emergency spillway where it's at an elevation we control.
All right, thank you. Any more comments, questions? We're good on those. Okay, any more public comments?
Real quickly, what's going
Can
to
you
happen?
Can you please step up here so
Yeah.
we can get it on the mic?
Okay, Bruce Adams, thank you. What is the plan for the empty space at 30th and Reynolds, the southwest corner that greasers have? I know once upon a time, 10, 12, 15 years ago, they said they'd like to put some apartment complexes in there. Also, that block between Reynolds and Indian Paintbrush, is that going to be for residential development? And if so, have you planners looked at that 10, 15 years down the road, how that's going to impact all of what's happening today? I don't know.
Yeah, thank you.
Chair Commission, that was not within the scope of this study. I can say that we haven't seen any applications yet for either of those properties. And I'd have to, there's a great many uses that could be proposed within those subdivisions. It's going to be those individuals' responsibilities to continue to develop as sustainably and appropriately and responsibly as possible when it is time for those properties to be developed, when that happens.
So nothing is currently proposed, and you didn't reach out to the property owners to ask if they wanted to propose something or anything?
Correct.
Okay. So we don't really know what the answer is to that. Any more public comment?
If I may.
Yeah, by all means, please. Please just state your name and address and make sure your little green light's on so we can hear you.
Trent Brome, 1066 Frontera Drive. So I'm Trent Brome. This is my wife Cheryl, and the stench that just entered the room is my son Logan. He's got out of football practice, so I apologize for that. We are the developers of the property. I wanted to address some of the questions. I'm aging, so I apologize if I miss some people, but you had asked about stormwater protection during construction. So if we don't make any topographical changes, it is as it is now. But once we begin construction, we have to apply for a DEQ permit, and that DEQ permit will actually dictate our stormwater responsibilities to make sure that the stormwater is dealt with properly on site. I also apologize. I got to be in public speaking, so I sound a little shaky. That's why. But that would be our responsibility during development. Now, afterwards, once we convey the property to the new property owners, it will be in the covenants that they cannot change any of the elevations. So once they purchase that property, they have to go through the city permit building process, and they basically submit a site plan with that building permit process. So if they make any amendments, they are then liable. I think the question was asked, who the onus was on. So it transfers at the time of sale, and they have to go through the proper permitting processes with the city in order to ensure that they are not changing grades. Unfortunately, we can't catch everybody that wants to do stuff without pulling a permit or without notifying people, but our hope is that that would not be the case. I believe there was a question about R1. So our intent is to have all single family houses. I know the city can't speak to our intent, so that's why they put primarily. We will also have in our covenants, minimum house size and some additional things, but ensuring that the people that are purchasing these are building single family residents. With regards to timeline of the project, I wish I could answer that, and I'm sure my banker wishes they could answer that. Unfortunately, we're going through the process with the city. We don't know when that process will come to finality. We can't begin construction until that process actually comes when we get approval. Our intent obviously is as soon as possible, but obviously we all live in Wyoming and we know that weather constrains construction, especially this type of construction. So it'll be once the process is complete, we'd like to start as soon as possible, would be my answer to that. With regards to the detention pond above your place, I understand why there would be significant concerns. Not only am I a developer, but I own an earthwork company as well. So we'll be completing a lot of the earthwork. And I did just give you my address, so I promise you, we're a part of this community. We're neighbors up the street. We have to drive by it every day. Our interest is not to do shoddy construction. We're not leaving town when it's done. We're here for the long haul. So we really want to make sure that it's a good project. To that, initial conversations, we were asked to look at reducing our lot size because there is such a high demand for lots in the city of Laramie. So I think the city code now allows for 5,500 square feet, something like that, but it wasn't our intent for the property. So while we could have maximized our profit and shrunk the lot sizes down and put box houses on them, it's just not what we were looking to do. I don't think it fits the neighborhood. And it wasn't our intent. So we went with, the lot sizes as they are because we feel like it is actually a representation of the community as a whole around there. Boy, I'm trying to think of anything else that I might have missed. Soil conditions. So because we do that for a living, we have a construction company and we do earthwork. If we are excavating the pond and we identify soil that is not going to be conducive to building a pond there, once again, I just gave everybody my home address and I live right up the street. We're going to do something about it. There's certain things that we can do with bentonite or clay or pond liners if we run into a situation where we don't think it's going to be structurally sound, or if it puts anybody downstream at risk. I think a lot of the concerns that were addressed tonight seem to be drainage related, which is totally understandable. We've spent almost a year on the design of this project, and most of that time was spent on the back and forth regarding drainage. We want to make sure that we got it right. We want to make sure that the end product was more beneficial to everybody and it didn't impede on anybody. So we are changing the contours of the topography of that ridgeline. We're changing it to the benefit of the people downstream. We're taking more of that water, directing it to the street and moving it off site than we are allowing to continue to run down the hill and into residents. So a lot of the existing swales will be filled in, and there are currently channels for water to come off the property and down to the properties to the north. Those will be filled in and back graded to the street so that we see that water, instead of flowing down to the north, we're going to capture that water, put it on the street and take it out. So that's the intent. But like I said, yeah, we're here. We're part of the community. We're not going anywhere. Our intent is to have a successful, good looking construction project when it's all said and done, and really to be good neighbors too. I understand everybody's concerns, and I just want to get up and introduce myself and address those concerns. So if anybody else had any that I missed, I'm happy to stay up here.
The snow removal.
So you're right. We did not do a good job of snow removal. We didn't understand that it was our responsibility when we purchased the property. The city, in a very nice way, let us know that it was our responsibility. So once we understood that it was our responsibility, every time it snowed, we tried to have crews on site with a skidster. It's just a lot of sidewalk to hand shovel. So we were sending crews up there with skidsters, four-wheelers, to make sure that we were maintaining that. I don't know how that's going to translate to the future, whether or not that's going to be a responsibility of parks or responsibility of the residents, but one way or another, it's somebody's responsibility. We were just derelict in ours. So I sincerely apologize, because you're absolutely correct.
My concern, you want families there.
Absolutely.
Kids walking to school, so.
Absolutely, yeah.
We need to have clean sidewalks.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Thank you.
So one way or another, that will get addressed, and whoever is responsible for it will be held responsible.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talked about the pork chop at the first exit out of there.
Mhm.
What are the other two?
The other two are going to just be a straight stop sign.
They can go either way.
They can go either way. So there was a lot of concern about proximity to one of the streets to the intersection, which is very understandable. So we went back and forth with the city, coming up with the best solution. So to give you a visualization, it's gonna look a lot like the hotel entrance. I apologize, I'm not addressing you guys. As long as the mic's big. Okay. It's gonna look a lot like the hotel entrance off of Grand. So it has a median in the middle that forces people to only make right-hand turns in and right-hand turns out. So it's gonna alleviate a lot of traffic that would normally turn left and stove up that Harney, Grays Gable Reynolds intersection. It's gonna force them to turn right. And if they want to turn left, they're gonna have to go further down from the intersection. I don't know if that gave you a good mental picture of what it's gonna look like, but that's similar to what it's gonna look like. The only thing I can think of in town.
I do have another question.
Absolutely.
At some point, Tammy Hooper, at some point, if it's determined that the traffic flow isn't, conducive to ingress and egress, I mean, the pork chop is great, but like on those other two ingress egress points, and you've got people that are traveling east on Harney and they want to make left-hand turns, and then it starts to back up, because there's no turn lane in Harney, and then there's a bike lane. So you're gonna have people cutting into the bike lane to go around the cars that want to turn left into the development. At some point, can that be addressed by the city or by you as the developer to possibly make another pork chop or whatever, no left turns or whatever? I'm not sure.
We did talk about
Hey,
signage.
Mr. Brown, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Please, we only have a mic here and we can't be doing the back and forth thing because we can't hear what's going on back there. So,
You couldn't hear me?
the mic is ready. I could hear, but maybe the mic couldn't. So, if you would, please speak into the mic. But
Yeah, absolutely.
so we can keep it all so the folks online can hear as well.
So I think they tried to address that as best they could in the traffic study, that there's gonna be minimal impact. And we did want to make sure that any impact close to that intersection was dealt with appropriately. I don't know down the road, like if it's approved as is, I'm not sure down the road if there can be changes made to it. But like I said, we want a successful, if we start to have accidents or something crazy, we would absolutely address it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Anything else from members?
I don't think so. We've had quite a good discussion and a lot of public comments. So
Yeah.
and
Like I
it's
said,
all civil. Thank you.
Yeah, like I said, I just wanted to get up, introduce myself, introduce my family. Apologize again for the smell, but we'll get them out of here soon.
All right. Thank you. Commission, any more debate, comments or questions? Yes.
So I have one thing. I really appreciate the depth and the richness of the discussion. I remain somewhat uncomfortable with the particular finding that needs to be made regarding, and this is K on page 8. That it provides adequate public services and facilities to accommodate the uses permitted under the development proposal, such as roads, water, sewer, stormwater, schools, public safety, fire protection, vehicle and pedestrian connections, and access to adjacent properties. So I've been trying to think of a couple of I have 2 suggestions for consideration. One is that I think that the staff, I think I would suggest that there is, we heard a lot in the public, in the record of this hearing that addresses this more fully than the written staff response here. And I would suggest, and I don't know whether we can get comment from staff whether this is possible, but as this moves forward to the council, I think developing that staff response further for item K, I think we would be fulfilling our job as the commission and advising the council if there's more information there. Some of the items like schools are not even addressed in the written response. I heard one thing related to the consultant that was used related to stormwater. I would suggest that that information be added there. And related to that, I would like to consider an additional condition in the list that's recommended to address the issue of the grading plan and also the soil testing. And I would propose specifically that a additional condition be added. And I'm looking, this is under the staff recommendation, the recommended conditions required as part of each final plat. I would add a condition that says, and what I would, the language I would offer is final plat shall contain specific grading plan to illustrate flow of stormwater and soil testing to ensure stability and integrity of the detention pond located on outlet A parcel. I heard that was likely to happen anyway, but I would feel most comfortable, and it might address some of the public comments that were made to add that condition.
So, Ryan, if we want to make, how do we go from here? We make a motion to approve or disapprove, and then we add amendments?
Correct.
Okay, so, okay, that being said, we'll come back to, because I have a couple that add myself, I think, or at least the debate. So if we can get a motion to do something like this,
report or
condition upon the recommendation to approve. But right now we need a motion for this agenda item.
So, okay. I'll get that one started. I move further inclusion. ED 22-02 Ridgeline Estates preliminary plat. Based on findings of fact and conclusions of law and subject to staff's recommended conditions.
And okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we vote on that, or now do we discuss additional conditions?
Yeah, you can start making your amendments now.
Okay, so now would be the appropriate time to make an amendment.
So I would like to propose an amendment that would add condition I to the recommended staff conditions on page 8. And that amendment would read,
Are you wanting to add another condition because it goes all the way to?
oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Right, so yes, so it would be, oh, PQR. So I am recommending the addition of one R to read as follows. Final plat shall contain specific grading plan to illustrate flow of stormwater and soil testing to ensure the stability and integrity of the detention pond to be located on the outlet A parcel.
Outlot.
I'm sorry, yes, outlot, thank you, parcel.
Do we vote on that amendment, or do we? You can discuss it. How
You
do
first need a second to discuss it,
Okay,
and then you can discuss.
I'll
the
second it.
motion.
okay. In any discussion, and I have to more poignantly address that. when we talk about the detention pond, I would like to see a slope analysis on that northern side because it is against the basically a slope. And that's just I think Jared knows what I'm talking about when I say slope analysis. But I would like that to be as part of the that condition as well.
So,
I wonder whether we could add, so there's an existing condition L that addresses the detention pond. Could we take that as a separate amendment and add that language there?
I think that's discussing the landscaped. I mean, landscaped is the first word there and
Okay.
I think it fits better in yours because you're talking about the condition of the detention pond and making sure that that detention pond is safe, that we're not going to see a breach and a downstream impact.
So, we would need to, amend my amendment. Or I can make a new amendment and incorporate. What do you suggest?
or you could clarify your amendment.
Okay.
You could clarify your amendment.
So let me make sure, so say again what you would like to add.
Slope analysis. Can we do
Yes,
that?
I got it, okay, so let me restate my amendment to address your suggestion. So the language of the new condition 1R would be, quote, final plat shall contain specific grading plan to illustrate flow of stormwater and soil testing as well as slope analysis.
Yes.
To ensure stability and integrity of the detention pond to be located on outlot A.
I'll second that.
Okay, the amendment has been moved and seconded. Are there any more amendments or conditions? Yes.
Chair, Commission, just for clarity purposes and making sure if the amendment gets approved, that we know what you're exactly asking. Do you mean that this information be included in the final plat submittal information, not the actual final plat document? That's a document that really wouldn't ever contain any of this.
It would be in the engineering report.
Okay.
To be included
Okay.
in
Yeah.
the submittal before
Final
we
plat
act on
submittal. Okay.
final plat.
Okay. I
Thank you.
just wanted to clarify that just to make sure.
And then
Thank you.
subject to your staff approval as.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
As
you. Just
usual.
wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
Okay, so we have an amendment, and we have it seconded. Do we vote on the amendment first or on the primary motion?
The amendment first,
The amendment first.
if you're done with discussion and
Okay, is there any more discussion on the amendment? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. So all in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed, same side. Motion or amendment approved. Is there any other amendments that we want to, or conditions that we as a commission want to recommend to the city council for this plan? Okay, so with that, we have the primary motion that's been moved and seconded. And all in favor? Aye.
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 Actually, clerk, can we do a roll call on that probably?
Yeah, I probably should.
Pacino,
Aye.
Dixon,
Aye.
Matamore,
Aye.
O'Toole,
Aye.
Priscillic,
Aye.
Schneider,
Aye.
Moody is absent. So that is 6 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent.
Okay, so that motion has been passed and the plat has been recommended for approval at the city council. So that concludes that discussion item. So if you're not here for any more, thank you for coming. You can leave.
Mr. Chair,
Take 5.
yes,
We want a 5-minute recess.
yep,
Do we need a motion for that?
I'll move we adjourn for 5 minutes, smoke them if you got them.
Okay, moved in seconded, we take a 5-minute. How about we do 6 minutes and now we'll do 5. Because that's what this means. So 6:34, we will be back. We will come back into session for the City of Laramie Planning Commission August 28th meeting.
Chair, Commission, just in an attempt to allow for the only remaining public that are in the room. They are the ones here with your presentation. That is item, item number 9 in your agenda. If it pleases the commission and the chair, I think it'd be appropriate if you wanted to move that item up ahead of the regular agenda item 6B(I). You could do that through a motion, which would allow them to do their presentation prior to the text amendment, and then staff can present the text amendment after they've presented. I think that's okay with the applicants. And so,
Mr. Chair,
if you so choose.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we move agenda item 9 to our next item for discussion, simply because I wouldn't want anybody to have to sit through the code, the changes in the language that we're gonna have to go through after this. So it would be, we got the job to do it, so, but they don't. Let's get on with it.
Okay, we have a second.
On humane grounds, second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, agenda has been updated, so we will go to the number 9, a work session agenda item. Phil, floor is all yours.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. This is a work session item, so as you mentioned, switch the agenda around a little bit, but there's no action going to be taken tonight. Just some general information, a presentation by our potential applicant, and a discussion amongst members to kind of get an idea, give them an idea of what direction the city planning commission wants to go with this. So as you're aware, Lamar Advertising has approached us with a proposition to switch up some of the signs they have in town. In your memo, you have the map locations of the ones that are actually in the city outside of the I-80 corridor, since that one that's mapped in their presentation that they're going to give later, that they have several additional locations other than the ones that I've mapped for you all. The ones that you see here are ones outside of the I-80 corridor billboard district, which essentially is much more flexible than in the rest of the city. So I just want to make that clear. That, and then there's 2 also that are proposed to be changed that are actually outside of city limits. So just so you're aware of that. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. I'm just going to kind of give you the rundown of what city code has in it regarding billboards as well as EMCs, because the billboards as they're defined in our city code are understood to be static. And then we have code for EMCs, electronic messaging centers that you see around town, mostly on monument signs. I mean, there are some on the interstate that for gas prices mainly that we allow, but those digital EMCs are really heavily regulated as far as, you know, proximity to residential districts and within the city limits in general. To kind of go through these code sections, a little preview of the text amendment process that will come after this, right? But just the first section there is the section on off-premise electronic messaging centers. You know, this has to do with how often they can change. And you can see there what the regulations are. The next one, LMC 1514-120, also speaks to animated signs and electronic messaging signs. It speaks to the fact that they should not exceed 16 square feet in sign area in specific residential, in residential zoning districts. So not just R1, but all the way up to R3 multifamily residential. So that's important because 16 square feet is 4x4, right? And so it is, what I'm trying to get at is I'm trying to help planning commissioners understand that we really don't have a code for digital billboards of this size at this point in time. Going down the line again, we have a prohibition of billboards in residential zoning districts. So there are ones that are grandfathered in. Those are the ones that are mapped here that fall outside of the I-80 corridor. Those cannot be changed or altered per current city code. That also goes for commercial industrial zoning districts. So the pole style freestanding sign is something that when the code was created that the city wanted to be real cautious about. And in that rendition of the code update, they prohibited pole style billboards, not just, I mean, digital, anything, static. So no new billboards can be built at this point in time. Again, I'll jump to a couple of the code sections that have to do with the buffer area. As far as if EMCs are allowed, which they are in business districts and industrial districts, they can't be within 300 feet of any residential district. Actually, you know, condition that statement, they can't exceed a certain size, which is 16 square feet. Again, far smaller than a billboard that's going to be closer to about 11 by 22. So closer to 230, 220 square feet. Again, there's additional code speaking to EMCs near residential zones. You know, this section of code has to do with just, you know, what we heard about earlier, night sky stuff, code sections we have already in place that really protect residential areas from additional light pollution and light going into their homes. And then the map, as I mentioned, or the locations rather, show you where these billboards are. I just, as a matter of course, included how close they were to the closest residential zoning district. You can take a look at those. And the planning division, really, we haven't taken a stance. We don't need to at this point in time, since this is a work session item. We just wanted to pull these sections out of code, inform the discussion that you guys are going to have. But Mr. Chair, I'd like to turn it back over to you in order to either ask me any questions or turn it over to our reps from Lamar and their assistant to provide their presentation, which we have queued up.
Yeah, I think we would probably, unless the commissioners
Well, just,
suggest
Mr. Chair,
otherwise.
just one quick clarifying question. Could you describe the difference between, and I'm looking at 14.15, the city's intent on removing billboards, the difference between the pole style sign and the monument style?
Yeah. Yes, Member Pacino. So pole style freestanding is kind of, well, they're on, that's what you see in these images below. Those are pole style. So the monument style sign is something that we're trying to promote more of, which are just basically, they don't really ever exceed, I think it's something like 12 feet or maybe 16 feet. So they're not very high. They have a base. They're not the traditional billboards as you would see them, but they're the ones that are, you know, really popping up on Grand and the major thoroughfares. I hate to say it, they look like big gravestones essentially.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions online? If not, I think we'll go ahead and turn it over and are you queuing up the presentation? Okay, who's guiding us through the presentation? Okay. And please, like previously you've seen, please state your name for us and your representation.
Absolutely. Members of the commission, my name is Megan Getz. I'm an attorney here in Laramie. My firm is Penson Macmillan, and I have the pleasure of working with Lamar on this project. And the reason that we're here tonight is to truly gauge what the commission's interest is and what your concerns are with making a change of 4 existing signs within the city of Laramie to modernize them. This is what other communities across the state are doing. They are taking down what are old structures and modernizing them with modern technology that actually helps to really fit within the code and different concerns that communities have moving forward, while also becoming a 21st century community and really meeting the needs of the community. And so what we would like to do tonight is to walk you through what we are seeing as the benefits of modernizing 4 faces within the community, talking through some of those technical aspects so you can really understand what's the light pollution, what are the sizes of these boards, how do they actually work and look with the monuments that are doing the exact same thing right down the street, and really making sure that the commission understands that Lamar is not seeking to add new billboards. They are not seeking to open up a code that would allow more billboards, simply looking to transition 4 faces that are along the 3rd Street and 1 on Grand Avenue corridor that directs downtown businesses or directs businesses in the community, directs patrons to those businesses in the community. So you're going to hear where most of the billboard advertising comes from, that it is local, and just some of the research that accompanies these signs for safety and for other different reasons. Want to try and go quickly because you've all been sitting here for quite a long time, but I want to introduce, you've got Wyomingites here who have to travel back and forth from Cheyenne to Casper, so greatly appreciate that you've made this change in the agenda. Joe Shreve is here. He's the general manager for Lamar. Jamie Rideout is the real estate manager. Craig Bendixson is the sales manager. And Matt Young is the operations manager. So they will be helping me throughout this presentation, answer your specific questions, and really just talk about where it is that the commission wants to see the city of Laramie go with these signs, and what questions and kind of guardrails are you thinking of so that we can work with the city to craft the best resolution. That's why we're not asking for any text amendments right now. We want to know from the commission and from council, what are your concerns and how can we help address them and mitigate them moving forward. So we hopefully then present a proposal that really is the best best for the community. So with that, I'll turn it over to Craig. Craig is going to just give you a little bit of information about Lamar and also the state of the digital billboard proposal.
It's on, right? Craig Ben Dixon. So Lamar Advertising is a public company, public outdoor advertising company, one of the biggest in the world. Wanted to narrow that down a little bit. And I know we brought a lot of people, but I wanted to make sure we all kind of have some specific knowledge. So to answer any questions or concerns more accurately. So specifically our group, our main office is out of Casper, Wyoming. We've got a satellite office in Cheyenne, and we manage 1,400 static and digital faces over Wyoming, Western Nebraska, and then a little portion of Northeast Utah. To narrow that down a little bit more, we have 100, it's exact, 100 faces in Laramie or Albany County to get down to local.
So we're going to talk tonight, we're just going to walk you through some technical information about the boards, the 4 proposed locations we were talking about, the details of those boards, the benefits that come to the community, and also the safety. You're going to hear tonight a lot about how the billboard is comprised in the different spaces that are offered. So you'll hear how the community will receive one of those slots, so to speak. And that slot of the 8 slots that are available is dedicated to the community. And so the community can do different public safety or different community run advertisements. So you'll hear about that in just a minute. But one of the things that I really wanted to point out is Laramie City Council has spent a considerable amount of time and a considerable amount of energy trying to create a plan that makes communication with this community more accessible and more modern. And truly, this is where Lamar's proposal falls into play. And so, it's been a highlight in the Boomerang. It's been a highlight on social media. It's really been out there as far as how do we as a city communicate with our constituents, and we would offer that this is one of those means in how you do so. So before we get into these details, I'm just going to go ahead and this is a video that will show you exactly what a digital billboard looks like.
Dynamic digital design, also known as iSpots, a little something extra, adding an element that's instant, informative, and/or interactive. It's a great way to make a visual ad stand out. Large social media capabilities will real-time social media feeds and place them on large format output. Social media capabilities with Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, allowing a client to extend their social efforts to a larger target audience. There is no additional charge to implement social media, and it only requires a few steps. Lamar offers several digital capabilities that are easy to use and are a great way to create interesting, memorable impressions among your target audience. Consider dynamic digital ideas for your current and future campaigns with Lamar Advertising.
So next, we just want to highlight some more of those. Switching. Some more of the, thank you, Ryan. So more of the benefits for our community, and then we can get into the technical aspects. So Jamie, if you want to address also what I was referring to as slots, and then also some of the aspects of the benefits itself.
Yeah, I'll just address that real quick. So slots are the individual spots that each customer is on. Technically, that's how we chart them, we activate them, and then that's how they get up and running. So what we're proposing is, so each spot is 8 seconds. That is, if I'm correct, YDOT's code, 8 seconds per spot. Now it's digital, but it's static messaging. So it's a static message, it flips to another static message. There's no movement. What we're proposing is having 7 sellable slots to customers, and then having an 8th additional available to the city to do, whatever. Is it traffic for the football game? Is it weather? Is it, anything you can think of? So just to clarify what that is.
Good evening. My name is Jamie Rideout and I'm the real estate manager for Lamar. So the benefits of digital, I mean, they help provide a means, put out amber alerts for missing children, gray alerts for seniors, help catch fugitives, we tie into the FBI program for most wanted. We donate millions of dollars worth of space to public service campaigns nationally and locally as a company. We also help with relief organizations at times of disaster. FEMA as well can get their message out, i.e. any hurricanes. This is hurricane season now. We also pay tribute to local and national iconic figures who pass away. Bob Barker, they're on our national network today. So he is. So anyway, in Wyoming, we currently operate 16 digital displays throughout the state. We have 3 in Rock Springs, 1 in Riverton, 8 in Cheyenne, and 4 in Casper.
So we assume that you're going to be interested in the technical information so you can understand. And we did do a code by code analysis just of what this would look like and fall within the existing code. So you know what you're needing to consider or what you're needing to tell us. But I'd like to turn it over to Matt Young as far as the technical information of the board. And he actually brought one of the modules so you could see how the light illumins will actually decrease with the digital technology versus what you have existing in the skies now, and just some other questions. So I'll welcome Matt.
My name is Matt Young. I'm our operations manager here in Wyoming. And one of the things, so currently Lamar is committed to reducing waste. We've switched almost entirely over from the PVC material that billboards used to be made out of to a PE, which is recycled. Everything we have goes to companies on the East and West Coast, and they make backpacks and board bags and different like bicycle bags out of them. So that's one way, instead of throwing away or like the PVC material of the past, they couldn't reuse to make new billboards out of it as well. So it's something they've moved to in that aspect. Also with our digital recycling, the digital displays have about a lifespan of 10 years. They've updated so that everything's a universal 400 millimeter module. So instead of having to remove an entire display off the board, we can go in and just replace all the internal components and these individual modules in the face. And then all of the old materials go to a nationally certified e-waste recycler. The one that's closest to us here in Wyoming happens to be in Denver area. Maintenance requirements. We're there about once a year for what we call our summer prep to go through, check everything, fans, make sure bird nests aren't inside the board. We do experience very infrequent visits now with the newer technology. As far as one of these will occasionally go bad, or a cable, or some of the different internal components that are in the boards. The nice part about the digital is our actual footprint that we're doing, because currently when we visit a location, or every time an ad has to be changed and we're visiting that location. So guys are driving in a truck there and then, posting the new ad and then having to drive back. With this, there are no site visits to change an ad. It's all done remotely from our network operations. So also Lamar, we have done the entirety of Wyoming already, and Lamar as a whole is doing their inventory across the entire US. We've replaced all of our old HID fixtures that were on boards that are massive power consumers with new LED fixtures. And those, from a technician standpoint, are phenomenal because we don't make site visits changing bulbs anymore. They never go out. And so that, with that being said, all the boards that are currently being proposed, they are illuminated and their lights are pointed upward. So that is what, I know it's a concern is the light pollution issue of it. And with the modules, it's easier to see from this direction. You can see that the louvers actually angle downward on them. So the light is directed down and not straight out or up. And with that being said, Daktronics will manufacture modules, if you have a sensitive area where you are near it's, permitted correctly, but it is near a residential zoned area. They can also put side louvers on too that direct more towards the road and down, so it doesn't get any ambient off the side towards the neighborhood areas, which is something that they didn't have in previous digital models, but that's an option now with the newer designs.
So before I let Matt leave, do you all have any questions, or would you like to see anything further on this module before he steps down?
Yeah, I just have one question on a typical size billboard that you have with the LEDs. What is the overall light output?
So the candles or nits, the nits relates to the candles. So they like to be able to see it's in compliance, like we're deploying one in Rock Springs right now. And at 150 feet for the poster size unit, that is what we're proposing for Laramie. It's 150 feet from the face of the billboard, 0.3 is the maximum. And we usually come in, and that's in, pitch darkness outside. We usually come in at, 0.26 or 0.27 in there. So we're under the required. And then they have a multi-directional light sensor on it. So they will automatically dim down when light conditions change. And then they are monitored 24/7 by our network operations via a webcam that sticks out in front of it. So that is the other thing, it's unsightly if, say, an entire portion or half of the board went black. So if we lose a large portion of that, they will just black the whole screen until a site visit can be made out there to fix the problem.
How difficult is it, Mr. Chair, if I could? How does your technology affect our existing code requirements on lumens and distance from the sign? I mean, are we completely outdated on this code requirement?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, we have a slide that shows a comparison of that and shows where we think we're pretty close and just what changes or tweaks would need to happen.
Good.
Any other technical questions?
What's the weather resilience like?
So the weather resilience is phenomenal. This particular module has been through 6 hailstorms already. And there's not a single broken louver on them. As far as weather resistance with moisture or anything getting into the cabinet, that's not an issue that we see here. Even in the hurricane areas in the Gulf Coast, they've designed them specifically. I mean, Lamar is based out of the Gulf Coast area. They don't really see water intrusion in any of the components. And snow, rain, the heat, here we kind of get, as everyone knows, we get a little bit of everything. So they do hold up remarkably well. We have a couple more in Cheyenne that are 12 years old that are still sealed up tight inside, and there's no sign of weather intrusion in those.
Is there a minimum operating range temperature wise for what those work in and what they kind of start getting?
We haven't found it yet.
Really?
Even with this previous winter, when the temps hit -50 plus, they were still up and running perfectly. And they do have temperature sensors in the face portion and in the remote enclosure, which is where the computer and the software and network switches are in there.
Yeah, thank you.
So I know that Philip prepared in his memo to you where the proposed locations were, but we just wanted to go through this again. So as we previously indicated, Lamar has this perfect number of 100 faces within the Albany community, the Albany County community, and we are proposing these four. Well, these are the locations that are available within city limits, and we are proposing 3 on 3rd Street or 287, and then 1 on Grand. And I'm going to show you some more pictures of those exact locations in a minute. The thing that I wanted to point out from the get-go is that people have asked us, why not try this on the I-80 corridor first? Why not see if that's an option? And we're going to get into one that's not within the constituents of the safety research and protocols, because you're driving at such high rates of speed. And 2, based on who uses these billboards, it really is, and you're going to hear the statistics, above 90% local. And so it doesn't make any sense to have these folks that are driving on 80 look at local, what's happening in your community or downtown businesses. It's really within the community that they work and they steer traffic. We've done several focus groups already, and the customers that are currently using the static facing billboards are thrilled about this opportunity, that potentially there might be digital frameworks available for them. And just the general take is that even the downtown businesses, the university, the community as a whole would really appreciate this flexibility that's there. Of course, when we get to a situation where you're looking to vote on something, we would bring that to you more formally so you could see that support and garner that public input. But just wanted to let you know we've started by doing some due diligence with some small focus groups to make sure that this is even something, again, that our community would like and appreciate, especially in these locations. I wanted to point out.
If I may interject here, I was a downtown merchant for 21 years in Laramie, and anything that gets more traffic downtown would be greatly appreciated by all the merchants down there. So, yeah, there is a potential there for use besides other concerns, but there is a potential where it could do some good. Thank you.
Commissioner, thank you for that comment. That, it does seem to be somewhat counterintuitive that folks in the downtown area might not want this, but it's actually, we're finding the opposite, like you just said, that it really does help drive that traffic in business. The thing that I want to point out is, again, over the past 5 years, Lamar has removed 21 signs and added none. So they've taken down structures that aren't working or that aren't effective. So I think it's important as you consider your plan and your long-term goal. Lamar's already doing that, right? They're already fulfilling the need of removing that clutter. And what they're asking for is to take 4 of the existing static structures and change them to these digital structures to modernize. So we are not asking for anything more. We're just asking to modernize and update to what the rest of these communities are doing right now. I'm glad to continue talking about the transient nature, but I wanted to point out, and I think Craig's going to come out and point out the exact locations of the signs that we are talking about.
I apologize for getting Jamie's.
Oh, Jamie's going to do that. I'm sorry.
So these are, good evening. These are digitized photos that we mocked up here of our existing locations as they are situated. The top one there is 2330 Grand. Oh, you went ahead of me.
No, I didn't mean to.
You're fine.
Here we go.
Yep. Back up.
Back.
There we go. The bottom was on 287 South, just north of Huron. And that was, according to my records, planning staff can correct me, annexed into the city. Then top one there is the 3rd Street north of Curtis. The bottom is downtown at 282 North 3rd Street. That's a 3-panel unit. So we're just looking at that north face as a possibility in the heart of downtown. And then this is 721 South 3rd Street, also known as Napa Auto Parts. That's a possibility as well. Yeah, I'm on.
So,
Thanks, sir.
thanks, Jamie.
You bet.
Unfortunately, this video doesn't work, but Matt can certainly answer any more questions about the lighting technology. The video doesn't have permissions when we upload it.
That one does. I think this one does. Just click
Oh.
Yeah, it was the last one that, it was the last one that did.
Thank you. Right. So we've already gone through a number of the digital billboard details, but wanted to just emphasize how they work. Matt and Craig, if you want to come forward and just talk about how they work and also reaffirm the slots and what that slot would do is providing to the community.
So yeah, I'll just start and I'll just reiterate on the right side there, it explains the number of slots, the slot that we would like to dedicate to the city for emergency messaging system, messages, and then what the dwell time is. And so what we also have is we have, as Matt has mentioned, we have a corporate entity called the NOC, and they monitor everything on this. So it's, you know, the messaging that goes up is monitored, and there's actually, I forget what the delay is, but
Well, there's also fail safes in place. When digital billboards first came out, it was set up so that a computer could be plugged inside the hub up top. They had some unfortunate instances where people had got into those and were playing content on them that should not be viewed by the public. And so the way these are set up now is if you open that enclosure that's in the back, it'll black the screen. And even myself, if I'm on site and I open that up to get content playing again, I have to call our network operations with who the technician is that's out there. And they have a list of authorized technicians to work. So that's one way that they did away with things playing that shouldn't be on the screen.
and then to go off on that, even things that aren't necessarily, you know, you worry about profanity or something like that. Obviously that's out of there, but we've got a governmental section that even the creative that's approved that we think may be, you know, touchy, it all gets approved through our corporate office before we even play it locally. So
Your 12 time, you're calling it 8 seconds. That means that sign changes every 8 seconds.
that's correct. And that's again per YDOT's sign code.
That's why that sign code.
Yep.
That, how many times a day does that work out? Because our code is how many times a day sign changes.
I think it was per hour.
Per hour.
Yeah.
Okay. And do the math on that.
So it would be, so per spot, so let's say there's 7 slots, we'll just go off the 7 slots, 1,440 8-second spots per day times 7, if we were completely full. So that would be how many times it would flip through.
Okay.
And again, static messaging, it's just flipping to another static message.
And there is no fade or dissolve when it flips out. It is just from that, it goes directly to the next message.
Okay. The only other thought I have is, I mean, when traffic engineering rolls up the sidewalks on a Wednesday night, puts them away for the night, do these things dim down? Can it dim down so that at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, we don't have an awful lot of light in somebody's house? Now, I could see on the weekends, you're gonna stay bright longer, but would that be a possibility?
They do dim down as far as being turned off completely. No, but at night they automatically dim for as the sun is setting, it'll start to slowly dim itself with that because of that light sensor that's on it. It automatically picks up ambient light and knows how to dim itself.
Cause I'm thinking the only few of these I've ever seen while traveling around, it's really bright.
And there are different things, you know, like your standard settings can be adjusted, you know, per different municipality sign codes. So that is another thing as well. You know, our max brightness could be less here than it may be in Cheyenne.
And I'll go off of that. I know the planning commission had the same question as far as at night. And one of the questions was, can we turn it off? The answer is no. And that's directed to our customers. They're paying for 24-hour advertising. And so turning it off for a certain amount of time wouldn't be an option on that side of it.
What's the response time? Let's say LPD has a Amber Alert or puts out a bolo. What's the response time between the time, how long would it take them to get a message out?
As quick as you could get the creative approved. It's real time. So if you had, so what we would suggest, and we could run through this, you know, I'm jumping ahead here, but you create a shell where you already have the creative set, right? So all we're going to be changing out. So whatever your generic, you know, Laramie PD or whatever, the shell's already built. And then all we need to do is put what the message is. That makes things a lot quicker. It could be within minutes. Yep.
So Craig's going to talk a little bit about digital signage already here in the community.
Yeah, so I mean, just on Grand, and I know these are on premise, but we've got this example by the movie theater. And then what we don't have a slide of is First National Bank has one too. And that's full color. The quality on this isn't great on these signs, but it looked like the First National was good quality. I think it was Daktronics. So, but
it was.
Yeah,
That's a watch fire.
but if you have an opportunity to go by there, it's actually flipping too. I don't know how I don't know what the code is for on premise, but it was full color and just an example of you guys already have the technology in the community. And you know, we're just wanting to expand on that and partner in that. So like Megan said, you know, Lamar's a national company. We've got a lot of national business, not necessarily in Wyoming. The population base isn't that great here. And so most of our customer base is local. In Laramie, it's 93%. And so like Megan said before too, we've had some focus groups and the response has been very positive based on what they've seen in Cheyenne, what they've seen in Casper, and what the capabilities are.
Jamie's going to talk a little bit about digital board safety, and then we'll be wrapping up.
Yeah, good evening. Digital billboard safety. So bottom line is digital billboards are safety neutral, according to various studies that are out there throughout the United States. I mean, OAAA, which is the Outdoor Advertising Association of America, which we're a member of, they've invested a lot of time and money into a lot of these traffic studies. They're out there with FHA, DOT, et cetera. They don't distract drivers. You are at the video that doesn't work. Bottom line is they're safety neutral. There's no study out there that says they're any different.
That video one.
That's the one that doesn't work. But one, I think the link. That's me too.
Thanks, Jamie. So we took some time to look at the 6 bases that are in the community and within the city limits and say which of these and how would they fit within the code itself. And so you can see that we eliminated 2 of them just based on the restrictions in the areas that were there. So the 4 faces we are proposing, you know, we wanted to just show a comparison slide that we were mindful of what the code currently allowed for and the discussions and considerations we would need to have with the Planning Commission now. So this kind of goes, I think, Commissioner Matamore, to your question as far as how far out of line are we? We don't think we're that far out of line. And really, we want to propose the solution that makes the most sense for these, I don't want to say isolated for incidents, but isolated 4 boards, let's go with that. As opposed to opening up a discussion that is beyond the purview or scope of anything that we want to do. We don't want to add more. We don't, want to go down a path of saying to the city of Laramie, you need more billboards. We simply want to see what your concerns are and then talk about ways in which we might be able to mitigate them and partner, as Craig said, to come into the current times. So with that, I think it's a win-win. We believe that obviously it's a great way to communicate with the community. It allows Lamar to work with more of our community and provide public servicing messages, and really does give those area businesses access to high-value, state-of-the-art marketing with the ability to really mitigate some of the issues that are out there now and transform the look of our community in a very positive way, in a very good way.
If I could, one more. What's your policy on political advertising? I think we get enough of that.
So the policy is everything's rate card. So as far as rates, we've got a set rate that everybody, regardless of political affinity, what they're running for, it's all a set rate. We make them prepay. Is there any specific question you have?
Well, I just, we come close to election time, you're going to get people bidding for all 7 slots. You're going to have.
Yeah. So, if we've got the availability and somebody's got the money to pay for all 7 slots, that'll be available to them. But as far as rate integrity, every single ad that we sell is going to be the exact same.
All right.
Back to the last slide, I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, just on this slide, if you could, I'm not quite getting what the difference between the red and so what is it that you're proposing? Is it the ones that are checked, or? I just don't know how to read it.
Right. So the ones we are proposing, the 2 locations that are in red are the 2 locations that we determined were not compatible. So it's those other 4 that are listed.
And compatible with what? Because none of them are compatible, right? I mean, none of them would be allowed to be changed.
Right. So they showed the most lack of compatibility with the existing regulations as they stood.
Thank you.
So what aspect, as you say, the lack of compatibility, what aspect of code are we talking about? Like photometric output, or like what aspects of code are we talking about? Yeah. Just like what are we talking about when you're telling us they're the closest to meeting what might be a code related item or the farthest away?
Yes, great question, Commissioner. So what we try to do is obviously, as Philip walked you through it, your code is very prohibitive for this type of signage now. So what we tried to do is we tried to compare what is already in place through these EMCs and also the location as far as the proposed footage from a residential zone, and really just hone in and say, if we were to ask for a variance, or if we were to ask for some modification for these 4 existing features, where do we fit or where do we not fit the closest to those? And so, we have the overreaching prohibition of this digitized billboard signage within the code. So we tried to then say, okay, based on where EMCs are, what their sizes are within residential areas, what are the lighting lumens that are allowed to be offered? How can we meet the most factors that you're already allowing in the community? Certainly, this is going to need to be fleshed out more, which is why we're doing this in a work session setting. We want to know, what are the things that are really important to you? What are the things that strike you as being positive? What are the things that strike you as being negative? And then work ideally with Derek and his staff to come up with a proposal that best meets that. We did not want to just say, here's a proposed code amendment. This will allow for this to happen without getting the community's input. It's been many years. I mean, I don't recall a conversation for at least a decade on this. I may have missed one, but we want to be respectful that it's probably an issue that you all want to talk about, and we want to talk with you as opposed to at you with a proposed amendment.
So, and I guess just to ask the question, at first pass, the preferred alternative would be to replace the current billboard sign with an EMC sign.
The proposed 4 locations.
At those 4 locations.
Yes.
At the same size, or the size that's proposed, without doing anything to the actual structure that's sticking in the ground. Is that correct?
Right. I mean, they are current pole structures. If you were interested in that, we could talk about it.
I can give you some details on that.
Come on up, Matt.
So it's all, it varies from location to location. And that's something that we.
Hold on, you got to get the microphone.
That varies from location to location, and that's done after we do site takeoff notes at those locations. So anything that's a monopole, I think all but one of these are, except for that double stack I-beam, are generally pretty good to go. What we do run into is we run it through engineering with the pole thickness on the wall, the amount of gussets on the head plate and bolts. We do generally have to make a couple modifications to convert, but the pole itself is generally sufficient. Sometimes they'll have to weld like a cross bracket from the torsion tube section to the column to support the added weight of the digital face itself. It does vary by location, and sometimes we get lucky and takeoffs, run through engineering, say it's okay.
Philip, what would the procedure be? Would they have to go through a variance to do this?
Commissioner, at this point in time, they're prohibited. So there's really
there's no,
I mean, there are
provision
avenues
for a
that we
variance.
talk.
There's no provision for a variance. They're totally prohibited.
I mean, there's almost always a way there's not a way for us at this point in time, the way that the code's written, to recommend any type of variance. If Lamar wants to propose a variance, because they are considered billboards, they're not considered EMCs, so they would be regulated as such.
Right. So the procedure would be a change in the code.
That's really, Commissioner, what we're seeing is the only avenue to really do what they're doing for these 4 signs. I mean, I'll just add though, I mean, it's very hard to write code for just a few, just existing signs. I mean, it's kind of it would have to be done very tactfully, and it'd have to be proposed by Lamar very tactfully for us to take a look at, because what the code currently saying is we don't want any billboards, and what's being proposed is changing the existing billboards, which are non-conforming uses for the reasons presented. I mean, we've not been able to analyze them all, but as Megan mentioned, though, I mean, it hasn't been discussed, so that's kind of the reason we want to get the take of the Planning Commission. And I think their proposal is highly going to depend on what this discussion is this evening, is what comes forth in their text amendment.
So I really appreciate the presentation and the discussion. I guess, and in the interest of being forthright and sharing my reaction, I get all the positive benefits you said, and I get and it makes a ton of sense why businesses, from the point of view of increasing traffic, would like the electronic digital version. But I think there were choices and there was reasoning behind the prohibition that was put in place, and it was aimed to move Main Street and the historic downtown in a direction of eliminating billboards, and I have trouble, I guess, despite your presentation, I still feel like the digital aspect, I appreciate, and I think it makes a huge difference that it's static versus what you might see, and it's very distracting. But I still think it's a move in the opposite direction of where the code is now, and the direction that the council and the community has decided to go. So I think that I'd be curious, for example, if there were focus groups that weren't focused on the businesses who are profiting. We need successful businesses downtown, but what's the reaction of the community in terms of having, I think they're expecting that billboards are going away in the downtown. How would they react? Do some focus groups on just kind of the community members and their view of the downtown area, and is adding digital electronic mechanisms at that size something that people feel is consistent with how they see Main Street and the downtown area of the community?
That's all I got.
Do we have any examples of other communities that have sign code like this that we could look at? Not necessarily right now, but in the in the future.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we did some initial research into, other cities this size, college towns, like what the general consensus is. And in the planning world, really, it's more of, pushing these to, more of what we're doing right now. Along the interstate, it's fine. I mean, that's what you'll find almost anywhere. Within city limits, it's very restrictive. We put out messages to several planners in other localities, and really what we're seeing is that it's really they're not expanding. They're doing what we're doing. I mean, what's there is there, but building new ones within cities this size that we've looked in, I mean, it's more or less what we're finding, but we do have provision for it, and that's along the interstate. So
yeah. Well, and I kind of share your concern in a different aspect, that it's kind of the problem I run into when I'm dealing with clients is like, well, they were able to do it, why can't I? And it's kind of like I guess the aspect that we need to have a level playing field across the board. If it's a non-conforming use, that's what it is. And if there's a way forward that is I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but where we make it into the code, but it doesn't prevent or prohibit other opportunities for people to be able to do something similar in a similar fashion, similar size, for the similar, I guess, end product, then that's concerning to me if we don't have a level playing field, I guess you would say. Any other discussion, comments online? Do we still have Sylvie and Chris?
I see some benefit to it. I also see that it could become a real political hot potato real quick. Letting some businesses do this and not other means. I mean, what are we going to have next? Drones flying around with signs behind them with changing the messages all the time. Don't laugh. That's not that far out of the realm of possibility. I'm surprised Lamar hasn't done that yet. I mean, it's give it a couple of years and it might just be here.
Fly drones commercially.
Well, that's like I say, I agree. And it should, if it's going to be done, it's going to have to be done that provides a level playing field to the community and to business as well.
Yeah, and I guess on that note, I mean, you've heard from all the commissioners and it's not. I don't know that we have a consensus one way or the other, but I think a way forward would be to present something, work with the planning department to come up with something and present it. Is that an acceptable way forward with planning staff?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I mean, the Lamar, as the applicant, can propose a text amendment. We would route them out just like we would any other development application. And then we would, based on our analysis, provide a recommendation and a staff report and, allow them to present as well. And that's how we go about it.
All right. Thank you. I guess we're done with our discussion, but any closing words, closing comments from Lamar?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that opportunity. Would really be interested in the commissioner's input or comments as you think about this, so that as we're developing proposed text amendment, it thinks about those considerations. If you could route those through your staff, that would be very helpful. I mean, we are trying to do this in what we consider a responsible way, which is to not just propose a text amendment that mirrors Cheyenne or mirrors Rock Springs or mirrors Casper, because they do have these available, and say that that's what works for our community. We're trying to understand, in addition to what the constituents and community members think, what do you all think from the get-go? So we're not making those decisions or determinations on the fly with that text amendment. So thank you in advance for sharing what your thoughts are, and we will come back with a proposed amendment. We just didn't want to put that cart before the horse before we actually had this discussion first. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Chair and Commission, just if you have anything you want, send them to one of the planning staff members and we'll make sure that it gets to Lamar so that they kind of know any other further things you would like to talk about. So, okay.
Well, thank you guys for traveling down and making your presentation. And like Derek said, we'll send our comments or any ideas we have or anything like that to you via them.
Thank you. And thank you very much for the agenda modification.
Yes.
We wish you well.
All right. Moving on from the work session, we will go to the very exciting item 6B2, text amendment 2307.
Oh, Derek, I thought you were going to do this.
So, Philip, floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this usually clears out the room pretty well, and it did tonight as well. So this is our annual text amendment update process, where throughout the year we make a list of, because we go through code every day, we live in this code, we see it every day. All kinds of situations come through where different sections of the code are highlighted for us, and every now and again we will find a section that needs to be updated. I've separated these into two categories: those of substantive changes, the ones I'll go over first, that actually will have an effect, on applicants in a manner that's they'll notice. And then there's kind of the minor grammatical stuff, periods where there's not supposed to be, and things like that. But yeah, so I will jump right into it. You can follow along, starting on page 2 under the proposed code changes, Roman numeral 1, the substantive ones. My plan is to go through all of these. I'll go through all the proposed ones, or the substantive ones, in Roman numeral 1 first, ask if there's any questions, anybody needs clarification, then I'll jump to the ones that are more clerical in nature, if you will, and then we can do the same thing. So I'll go through these. The first one is section 1514-140A11. The purpose of this change is to add the dead end in front of access aisles, and this brings this section of code into compliance with the General Fire Code, the International Fire Code section that's listed there. Number two, we have a section of code that has to do with fencing and a line that is drawn 45 feet from the front lot line where different things apply as far as fence height goes. And this proposed definition will just clarify that, because we've had several questions about how that works, but it's basically a parallel line 45 feet back from the front lot line. Number three, this one's kind of, it's kind of interesting the way these come about, but this one we had a development application for a building where different roof planes were required. And what we ended up with wasn't exactly what the intent of the code was for. Yeah, I mean, really, the planes are different, but it's almost not noticeable from the street. So it's kind of, it's not meeting the intent of this code. So we beefed up this section to really define what we meant by separate slope planes for roofs. And this is really to give, you know, this is aesthetic quality of the building increases that. And so you can see there's 4 additional criteria that we added to what changes in roof plane, roof pitch meant. Number 4, this one has to do with the porches, or the patios rather, in mobile home communities. Right now it's in code, it's required to have 180 square feet of a deck, a patio, essentially on every new manufactured home that is built. This is kind of exceeds what's required in traditional multifamily housing. So we just wanted to kind of level the playing field there for the development community, decrease that requirement to 40 square feet, which brings it into alignment with that multifamily development requirement. Number 5, this one's in our subdivision section. This one has to do with a statement that says lot lines shall be designed in conjunction with existing topography. We wanted to weaken this language because we found something that is very hard to enforce as far as through the subdivision process. As you can see earlier from what we went through, I mean, we can pretty much make anything happen, right, with the grading plan and kind of addressing stormwater. So I mean, this is more of a you know, something we want to have in code, just to encourage lot lines to be along topography lines. And number 6, this one has to do with our section on accessory dwelling units. We've had a lot of calls about this since this was instituted. And if you remember, accessory dwelling units really only apply to single family zoning districts, which it's our R1, our limited residential, and our rural residential. In our multifamily and R2 and R3, it is, we base the units on those properties by the square footage of the entire lot. So they're all units. They're not broken up between principal and accessory, which that's where the phrase comes from, accessory dwelling units. It's accessory to the principal dwelling. So we just wanted to clarify that, and that's what the proposed definition says. These next 2, I believe, 7 and 8 have to do with the site plan process and what triggers the site plan process. So these two sections of code 1506, 60 and 151410 are saying the same, are pointing to the same thing, but this change that's being presented really speaks to harmonizing these two sections. So people are aware, so the development community is aware, and we have it written clearly as to what requires a site plan. Number 9, this one has to do with the tree size. We do in our landscaping section, we require developers to meet certain landscaping points for every development. On the perimeter, within the development, there's certain criteria. One of the things we were advised by our city arborist was that the lower caliber trees actually grow better than the bigger ones. And we've actually talked to a few people, and this seems to be true. It's interestingly enough. So we want to do what we can through city code to kind of encourage the landscaping that goes in to stay alive, right? Because when the stuff dies, we have to write an enforcement letter, and it wastes everybody's time trying to get this stuff dug out and a new tree planted. So this is basically decreasing the caliper from 2.5 inches. We're just leaving it at 1.5. Number 2.
I think it says you're striking B entirely. So the proposed definition
right
strikes any requirement for size.
Thank you, Commissioner. That is correct. We went ahead and eliminated the requirement. And the the smaller the more inexpensive, but they still need to.
Well, but I mean, other sections of code define as 1.5. This is just a modification for the gateway district, the gateway overlay district. So that 1.5 is still picked out in other sections of code.
Yes,
I'm correct.
no, you're exactly right. This has to do only with the gateway overlay district, and 1.5 is referenced several other times in our landscaping section. So we're basically leveling the playing field. If your gateway, it doesn't matter the size tree, it can be the same as if you were out of the gateway. Okay, so we have a couple of new uses that we're adding in, or a couple new definitions we're adding. The first one is an indoor flea market category to the city's use table. Indoor flea market, I should say. This is something, I mean, it's just something that has come up, and we want to put it in the use table because it really doesn't seem to fit in any other use type. It's kind of unique from retail in a sense that it can be several vendors. So we wanted to throw it in there. We permitted it in the same manner that we permitted small retail under 35,000 square feet. So that's what you can see in that table there. Number 11, this one has to do with the design, with the design requirements for multifamily buildings. Again, we're clarifying here, we're breaking up the requirements for the facade of the building from the roof of the building. So you can get points, and you have to meet the criteria for both the facade and the roof. And this is, it's just gonna make things kind of easier for the development community to understand. Number 12 has to do with just adding the definition in. I went above the number 10. If you scroll up, has to do with adding it to our use table where it's permitted, what zoning districts is permitted in. But we always need to add a definition into 1528, which is our definitions chapter of code. So you can see the definition we're proposing for indoor flea market there. Also adding in, we have a section in code that has to do with minor temporary uses. There is a list there. Basically, we're adding indoor flea markets in there because we've had that conversation a few times and we want code to be clear. Bazaar is another one. Similar to indoor flea market that has a different feel from traditional retail. Wanted to add that definition into code. Number 15 has to do with basically sticker signs, window signs as they're defined in that section 1514 120. We ran into in a couple areas the way code's currently written is the more trafficked side of a building, the business will put all the stickers on that side, all the window signs on that side, essentially blocking any visibility into the store. That's what we're trying to actually prevent. So we kind of broke it up that this makes it so that you have to put the signs up, you have to distribute them among all the sides that you have windows on.
Philip, can I just ask a question on so bazaars and indoor flea markets seem to potentially be at a different scale than like tree lots or wreath sales. So by making them a minor temporary use, is there an automatic approval that comes with that, or what would happen next? Like, I mean, does that give them the right to do it automatically, or are there standards that they have to comply with?
Yeah, there are, Commissioner, there are standards in that section that speak to minor temporary uses, how long they can go on the scale and so forth.
Okay. Thank you.
Number 16, couple left. This one has to do with adding streets into, this is kind of an interesting one, into the code section on plat requirements. So as it currently reads, there's provisions for all types of other public infrastructure in this section, alleyways, sidewalks and so forth, but streets, it is loosely referenced, but we wanted to make it clear as an item as far as, streets are required through the plat requirements section. So
Philip, I got a question on that. If it's not in there, is there already a definition for what streets are? I mean, we know what they are, but do you need to specifically enumerate what a street is?
That does, we do, the next one actually has to do with that, because we were following your train of thought there. The next one speaks to a table in that section that, or a section in code that speaks to the different road classifications, road widths, and so forth. So that we're tracking you there. We wanted to kind of we wanted to align these sections so that they basically were saying the same thing. And then the last one has to do with storage space that is required for any multifamily development. Basically, we wanted to avoid garages being viewed as the only storage because you park cars in there. So this is essentially, making the garage for the intended use, but any additional space that you that the developer builds onto the garage, in addition to the 10 by 20 standard garage space, could count towards your storage requirement. So I'll stop there. Those are the substantive.
People put cars in their garage.
Some do.
I have my buggies. In
Right.
Philip, I've got a question going back to item 17. It says, item A, the amended part, it says minimum right of way streets widths, roadways widths for streets that will be dedicated to the city shall be as follows, and there's a colon, but there's nothing there. Was that intentional? Is there something in the code?
Yeah,
there or
Mr. Chair, after that, if you look at 1518, there the table is there.
okay.
The table with the road widths.
Okay, so we're just amending what that, but the table.
It's just
saying.
I'm sorry, yeah, that one, right.
Okay.
It's adding the language that it's gonna be dedicated to the city.
Okay,
Yeah.
but the table isn't changing, and
No.
that's why the table isn't included.
Right,
in this.
that's right.
Gotcha. Yes.
Chair, just to clarify, street is defined in the code, just, I know you just asked that, so I looked it up just to make sure. I was like 99% sure, but
Oh,
it is in there. It's, street is a technical term in the code.
Any other, I will move on to the minor changes and I will fly through these because as I mentioned, these are clerical. They're not of, they're not going to change anything for anybody other than just clarify and say what it was originally meant to say. Number one, we're adding under J, under 5J, we're adding family in there because that's how it's defined in code. We don't have child care center, we have family child care center. Number two, we have 2 A's in there, so we took out one of them. Number 3, this one, there was a period there between, you have to look real closely at this one, but where it says figure 15.1.4, there shouldn't be a dot between the 1 and the 4. It should be 151480. Number 4, we added limits in there to basically fill in the blank within city limits instead of within city. Number 5, again, took out an extra CC there, not needed. Number 6, there was no labeling on this table. And this actually is the table we were talking about. Minimum road widths and right-of-way widths. Number 7, required ADA parking spaces is in there twice. So took out one of them. These next, I believe it's 4 or 5, have to do with making right-of-way uniform throughout all of code rather than right-of-way, or that's what we want in code, but there's a couple of sections, I believe 4 of them, that it just said right-of-way. And that was it. We did public comment. We advertised. We received no comments. And we recommend that this body recommends approval to City Council. Glad to take any questions.
Okay, any questions? Any comment?
I move let me get this, to recommend that the city council approve amendments to LMC titles 5 and 15 for the purposes of updating definitions, uses, dimensions, and design standards in city code as recommended by staff.
Second.
I'll second it.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Do we need a roll call for this, or can we just do? Let's do it.
Oh. Pacino,
Aye.
Dixon, Dixon,
Aye. Sorry about that.
you're fine. Matamore,
Aye.
O'Toole,
Aye.
Priscillic,
Aye.
Schneider,
Aye.
and Moody is absent. So that is 6 yeses, 0 no, 1 absent.
Okay. Text amendment updated. Any long range planning projects you want to keep us here for another hour? Variances, no items there. And we adjusted item number 9. So we are at item number 10. We have a motion.
We so moved.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 All right. August 28th.
I just want to jump in here, you guys. Thank you. This was a long one. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Same thing.
Being adjourned. Bring your dinner next time.
And so September 11th is going to be a real bad one.